The story begins with a boy named Takuto. He goes around playing a video game in the hospital. He gets tired and falls asleep, but when he wakes up, he finds himself in an unknown forest. Having spent a long time in the hospital bed, he very much likes the fresh air of this place. A girl suddenly arrives, and Takuto recognizes her as Otto. He explains that the game he kept on playing while he was asleep is called Eternal Nations. It is an empire management simulator set in a dark fantasy world. He cannot believe that he is inside his own game with his favorite character, Aoyu. She calls him king and asks whether they should play a role. But seeing him confused, Otto assures him that everything is all right. She comments that he was the first to complete the difficulty called Nightmare with a very difficult civilization, Mynoghra, the civilization of ruin. Otto adds that his brilliant strategies have put him at the top of the official leaderboards and tells him that it is not for nothing whatsoever that he is the legendary player Takuto. The boy asks how she knows this. Thus, A tells him her memories, since every single word he said to her, she has recorded in her memory. Takuto mentions to her that perhaps he used her as his main attack character because he truly wanted to be strong like her, and now he is happy that they can talk face to face. She is also happy to meet him and asks whether this is paradise. But he asks her whether by any chance she sent him to this world. However, to everything, A informs him that she, too, finds herself lost in this place all of a sudden, and now with what he has told her, she does not think it is paradise, because it looks more like the world of Eternal Nations. Even so, O thinks it is a miracle and is glad to have him in person. Although she has no idea what this place is, what she is indeed certain of is that she wants them to begin together and build an empire just for the two of them. Takut, for his part, is of the same mind, but since he is here, he wants to do it again. He wants to recreate his brilliant ideas, and now together with he wants to build a nation just for the two of them, to which she, with a smile, lets him know that she accepts, then speaks like a video game NPC. Thus she introduces herself as two of the Mire, daughter of the mud, who will destroy the world. And from now on her body and mind belong to Takuto. Faced with this, Takuto mentions that it is embarrassing to act like that in real life, which she, very blushing, confirms. Takuto declares with confidence that he will be her one and only leader, while she will be his counselor and right hand. He tells her that although everyone calls them the most evil empire, they specialize in domestic and national affairs. So they both are of the opinion that the first thing to do is to isolate themselves, which, if we think it through well, makes a great deal of sense. Before anything else, Takut uses emergency creation. A long-legged insect appears which serves as a reconnaissance unit. Somewhat disappointed by its appearance, all Jiroso give it its first order, which is to explore the surroundings. Thus, immediately, the insect sets off to carry out its task. Now Takuto discovers that he can share its vision, similar to how he did in the video game. He examines his reserve of energy points, seeing that he had 200 magic points, but he just spent 100 points on the creation, so he only has 100 left. For now his plan is to build a settlement that will serve as the initial base. This costs 20 magic points. Otto, for her part, is astonished that an emergency creation costs so much. Therefore she advises not to waste any more. Ahoto tells him that he would have liked to create a warrior in order to have military might. However, with what they have now, it is not enough for them. Thus our black-haired boy sets himself to analyzing the statistics and mentions to her that the heroine unit, referring to her, will develop as time goes by. For now their strength is 3 units, which means that if they run into an enemy, they run a very high risk, for they could be annihilated. Realizing this, Takuto becomes discouraged. To all this, she encourages him to stay cheerful. Then Takuto kept watching the insect exploring, thus discovering that in this entire forest there are no animals nor monsters, but there is also no food to eat. Seeing that this does not help, she becomes a little sad. Nevertheless, the gallant Takuto reassures her and mentions that just having her at his side is enough for him. This cheers up the little lady. At that moment, Takuto sees a community of dark elves not so far from them. Aoyu supposes that this is normal in a fantasy world, and although the dark elves are neutral, it is said that they lean more toward neutral evil, so there is nothing to worry about. But this does not please Takuto, for the principal idea was to hide and isolate themselves from everyone in order thus to avoid possible wars, something that cannot be done with the elves nearby. Otto, as a woman who resolves things, proposes that they had better flee together. The protagonist gives her the reason, since in the end they love peace and harmony. Thus they begin to devise a plan. First they will watch the elves while they explore the surroundings, and in case it goes badly, they will opt to flee. Just when they were celebrating their marvelous plan, the Dark Elves find them. Now we are shown how the Dark Elves reached this place while they were advancing through the dark forest. After being expelled from their lands and having nowhere to go, the warrior, together with all his people, entered the cursed lands in search of refuge and food for the children who are now dying of hunger. Here Emil mentions to him that in the books it is said that in these cursed lands something evil was sealed, and whatever it is will prevent life from flourishing. Gia laughs at this and tells him they are simple stories. Here he motivates his people, for he begs them not to surrender for the sake of their pride and the spirits of their ancestors. Thus they continue advancing until they suddenly come upon Takuto and Atu, seeing our protagonist with the aspect of a dark being, as the living incarnation of absolute evil. Returning to the present, he is left terrified. He knows that any word misinterpreted or any rash action could affect the future of his entire tribe. Being fully conscious of all that, he approaches and, kneeling, presents himself as Jia Najib, a warrior chief of the Dark Elves of the Mazarum clan. He apologizes for having entered their forest without their permission. Otto acknowledges that she is aware of his insolence. Therefore, she asks him the reason why he committed such an intrusion. Jay explains their situation and how they were expelled from the central lands of Urea by the Tetrarchic Council. He continues detailing, but to being fed up with listening to him, she tells him in an intimidating manner to stop beating around the bush and get to the point. Jia feels that pressure. Thus he comments that they suffered a persecution and were expelled from their home. At that, Takuto tells them that they are very skinny. Therefore he orders everyone to give an explanation about that. Jia, completely terrified, argues that it was an intense persecution, but they escaped by entering the cursed lands. However, because of this they were left without food, and because of wanting to throw their pursuers off the scent, they have not been able to get provisions. Jia, full of frustration, asks the reason why his people have to suffer so much. With pain in his chest, he questions what they did to deserve this, since they only want a place where they can live in peace, and whether by any chance the desire to live is a crime. Here, out of nowhere, he throws several fruits and tells them to take them. Jay perceives a very sweet smell, whereupon Takuto explains that they are apples. These in particular are delicious, and they are cut in the shape of a rabbit. Jia grabs one, and after hearing everything he is astonished, since the fruits of his people are completely different. Here he wonders whether it would be discourteous to cut the fruit right then and there, and whether he ought to do it with so many people waiting for them to return. At that moment he hears how the other elves begin to eat, and to rejoice at how juicy they are. Takuto adds that he also has pears, which leaves Jia confused. Seeing him do nothing, he asks him what is happening, since his king is being kindly generous with them. Immediately Jia bangs his head against the ground and tells Takuto that there are more of them who fled to that place, including little children who are dying of hunger, so he pleads with him to please allow him to take them in order to give them to those children of the clan. Takuto feels a bit of pity, so he gives him a great variety of fruits, while Otto, terrified, only watches how he spends his resources and magic. All the elves are amazed at seeing so much food. For his part, Jia tells us that the Dark Elves have always been despised for having fled from the light. Because of this, they have been forced to live in the shadows, far from the light, without receiving any help whatsoever from the others. That is why the seeing of the act of clemency seems astonishing to them. The warrior, full of gratitude, asks our protagonist about his identity, but to this Takuto does not answer and only tells him, take them. Changing panels, we see the refuge of the Dark Elves. In this place we see how the majority are weak because of the lack of food, but then they sense a very pleasant smell, which turns out to be Jia and company with sacks of provisions. With this, to the entire clan distributes the food, obviously prioritizing the very little ones. Then Aselva asks him where they got so much food. He only answers that they obtained it by chance, for in his mind, he knows that he cannot spread the rumor that the provisions were given to them by a being of darkness. Afterwards, with the whole clan sleeping, Jia and the old man Molter sit around a campfire to talk. The elder tells him that the fruits he brought are exquisite, so much so that he would give them a score of 10 out of 10, and that in many years of his life he has never seen anything similar. Jan confirms it to him, for they are a delicacy he tasted for the first time in his life. Now Molda turns more serious and asks him what really happened. With no choice left, Jay reveals to him that he found a legendary creature in the very depths of the forest. The old man questions what he means by legendary, whereupon Gia mentions that Emil used to say something about a creature sealed in the cursed lands. Molter asks him whether by any chance he met the King of Ruin. Then, interested, he asks the elder whether he knows him. Somewhat nervous, the elder explains that some legends and ancient books are still preserved, in which it is said that when the world reaches its limit, the King of Ruin will appear and will bring perdition to the entire world, thus forcing the world itself to start from zero. Although he does not know whether it will be true, he also cannot assure that it is a lie. Thus he asks him whether he told him his name. Jia answers that he did not discover it, but thinking that if he really is the King of Ruin, he does not rule out the possibility that someone as fearsome as he could be that legend. The old man questions him whether he managed to speak with the king, to which he answers that it was not possible, since the king was a being who seemed to slip out of his understanding. However, a woman served him, and she clarified what the king said. The elder mentions to him that, whether he is the King of Ruin or not, that being cannot be anybody good. Therefore he asks him whether he gave anything in exchange for the food. The warrior denies this, whereupon Mulder is not convinced, since an evil being would not give them something without asking for something in return. Jay explains to him that Soul told their situation to that being when he asked them about it, and that surely he did it only out of compassion, referring now to the dark being as His Excellency, arguing that he empathized with their plight, and that is why he was benevolent. Molter, angry, asks him why he just called him His Excellency, and whether by any chance they bewitched him, since that title is used only as a sign of respect. Gia emphasizes to him that that being gave them food when they were dying of hunger, so the normal thing would be to respect him. Molter refuses to accept it and reminds him that he is a malignant being. Gia likewise does not retract it and asks him what he should have done, since, moreover, thanks to the provisions he gave them, they are wasting strength in this discussion. With this, Molter understands and grasps the situation, so he apologizes to the warrior Gia, but he mentions to him that from now on he will take charge of negotiating with the king, since after all he is their leader. Returning to our protagonist, he was being scolded by Atu after wasting his magic. Takuto excuses himself by saying that he felt a great deal of pity for the elves, which only annoys the poor even more, for she reminds him that their civilization has just been born and they do not even know what surrounds them. Takuto apologizes for having used his magic without permission, and begging her that she not be upset, he promises to do anything whatsoever that she asks. This seems excessive to Tu, who tells him that it is not necessary to promise anything, since in reality, she was not angry. But then our very gallant boy tells her that he needs her at his side, since nobody could take her place like she can, which immediately delights Tu. So now she apologizes for having been so cruel to him. Therefore she promises to do anything that he asks. To Takakuto, this seems appropriate. Yes, a full-on oppressor. But now, changing the subject, be sincere with her, for he does not think he was able to speak well with those dark elves. Although with her he can speak normally, it is a different case with the others, for the words do not come out well for him. While he cries, he reveals to Tu that he has trouble communicating. Faced with this, the little lady tries to cheer him up, all of this being seen by the insect, which suddenly lets out a squeal. Yes, the disgusting thing also has feelings. Returning now to the old man Molter, he, reminding the warrior G of the legend of the King of Ruin, asks him whether by any chance he is prepared to see the king again. The elven warrior confirms it to him. Here Molter highlights the important point, for since the King of Ruin has already given them a bit of alms, it is very likely that he will ask for something in exchange later on. Nevertheless, Ja refuses to believe this, for the king mentioned nothing of the sort. The elder stresses to him that the world works that way, for evil will always demand its reward. Although, to be honest with him, even he is conscious that to survive here, they must make use of the king's power. On hearing this, the warrior shares his opinion, since if they go back to paying for the world, it will cost them to get food, and if that happens, in the end they will only die. Here Molda reveals to him the true reason for coming to the Dark Continent, and that was to seek a realm where no one would persecute them. Therefore, following the King of Ruin would be their last chance. Thus the old man becomes serious and says to him, "March, comrade, for the destiny of our people rests upon our shoulders." Having said that, both of them set out to pay a visit to the King of Ruin, at the very same time that they were being watched by the long-legged monster, which we know shares its vision with our protagonist. He quickly runs in the direction of his king. On arriving, he wants to tell him something, but to silences him, resulting in the fact that now he is speaking with her king. Here Takuto stops her and mentions that he himself asked the monster to come back for a moment. Otto understands and calms down, so the long leg tells them everything it saw. Now Takuto knows that the dark elves are coming this way. Otto thinks that he provided them with so much food that they cannot even carry it all. But for Takuto, another concern arises, and it is that the very fact that there are beings of another culture and other ideologies, he knows, can only give rise to conflicts. And rather so he would like them to take the food and go away as soon as possible. But above all, he has his other problem, and that is the fact that it is hard for him to talk with others, so he is not sure whether he will be able to negotiate with them. Otto worries about her king, so, as a woman who resolves things, she emphasizes that she will take charge of negotiating in his place. That way Takuto could display his majesty as king. Here our black-haired boy asks her whether she is sure, but she, in a flirtatious mode, asks him whether by any chance he thinks that she cannot do it. Takuto denies that, for rather he trusts her very much. Thus, with a huge smile and referring to Takuto as her king, she exclaims that his wishes are orders. After a few hours the elves arrive. Here Molto lets them know that he is very grateful that he has granted him another audience. He introduces himself as the elder of the Dark Elves, Molter Cordal Mazarum. To all this, it seems good to Otto, for she sees that he knows how to show respect, as is proper. Thus she mentions to him that if they have come to say something, they should speak at once. The elder agrees with this and thanks him with all his heart for the food he bestowed upon his people. However, also, and with great respect, he asks the king to please tell him what his name is. This does not convince Otto, but to Takuto it seems fine, so she, with no choice left, presents him as Takuto Ira, the Lord of the Apocalypse and King of Ruin. On hearing this, the warrior is astonished, and Aoyu orders them that they must address him as King Ira or King Takatwara. And as for her, as Miss Tu, for she holds a lower rank than King Takuto. Therefore she earnestly asks them to avoid treating her the same as the king. On hearing this, the elder now refers to them with the due respect. He promises that his people will remember their great names, which seems fine to Takuto. Aoyu thinks that with this the meeting has concluded. Thus she asks them to take the food and get out, for she knows that some provisions can spoil soon. Here old Molder, still on his knees, begs her to wait and asks her, with great respect, what they can do to repay the having saved their clan. Otto, as the coldest of the cold, answers him that nothing, for she very much doubts that they have anything with which to satisfy the king. Molder thinks about this and stammers as he tries to say something. Otto, as the queen of the cold she is, mentions that she sees him undecided. Takut, seeing this, knows that this is going badly, so he calls to speak in private. He tells her something in her ear, but Tu is a little annoyed, mentioning that if they let them escape, they will end up bothering them, and they are only some foolish elves who do not even know how to negotiate. Rather, they ought to annihilate them and use their necks for their columns, since in that way they would farm more aura, and they would see him better as the imposing king that he is. Takuto stops her here and mentions to her that surely they, too, desire a mutual friendship that will benefit them. She does not quite understand those words, so Takuto explains to her that instead of just giving things away, they will accept the price that they are willing to pay, for Takuto well knows that that will leave them much more at ease. Now this seems good to Otto, so addressing the elves, she congratulates them, adding that her king is kindly and is willing to accept their offer. On hearing these words, the elder calms down and Gia rejoices, so both of them thank them for that generous decision. Seeing their reactions, Takuto realizes that that elder suspected that he was plotting something just because they are evil beings. Oh, although this annoys her, also understands it, but she, being the cold and straightforward one that she is, asks them whether by any chance they think that their king is a malicious phantom or a malignant specter. They deny this. Even so, Otto silences them all, and rather, in her mind, she asks herself what they can do about the price. Amid so many doubts, she decides it is better to ask Takuto. Therefore our king gives a short answer, the outside world. Otto shares this request, and orders them that they must tell them what lies beyond the forest. The elder is pleased with this, for he himself will tell them everything he has seen and heard. That seems fine to Tu, who mentions to them that once the agreement has been fulfilled, they may depart from this forest. On hearing this, the warrior Jia is frightened. Takuto notices this, for just by seeing his reaction, he understands him better than the elder. Here old Mulder asks for permission to remain in his forest. Otto stresses to him that they cannot accept that, warning them that if they do not want to lose the life that was spared, they should not tell anyone about what happened here. Jia, perplexed by these words, tries to refute it, but the old man silences him, emphasizing to him that, as it is the will of the king, they must obey. On hearing this, Jay looks disillusioned, but even so, he wishes to follow the king's orders. Here the old man takes the floor, thanks King Takuto for having granted them this audience, and, that said, withdraws together with Jia. Seeing this situation, Takuto asks himself whether they are doing the right thing, for now that they have been driven out, they will surely die somewhere else. So he thinks up a solution, and it quickly occurs to him. Aki, using his dark voice, stops them. On hearing him, both elves heed him. Takuto rises and asks them to become his citizens. This sudden proposal takes Jay and Molter by surprise, and it also takes our little lady by surprise. She asks them for a moment, for she is going to speak with the king. Here Takuto mentions to her his thought, and it is to make use of the refugee system. For if everything works as in the game, he knows that the Dark Elves are neither good nor bad, and now if they accept them as refugees in their civilization, they will end up becoming as evil as they are. Here A tells him that the Dark Elves are very different from the homunculi, who were their principal citizens in the game of Mynoghra, and that both races could clash with one another. Takuto is conscious that that decision is risky. Therefore, he makes her recall the physical aspect of the homunculi, asking her whether she could endure living with only those citizens. Ao remembers it with great disgust and knows that it is impossible to converse with those homunculi, since, as it is, their physical aspect is harmful even to the mind. Having said all that, and making Aoyu understand better, Takuto asks her to communicate it to them. Aoyuo immediately complies, promising them that in this new nation they will be protected. Here Molter, a little doubtful, asks what will become of them if they are his citizens. Aoyu promises them eternal happiness, but she knows that that is not what they want to know. So she reveals the harsh truth, and it is that they will become evil beings. Here she leaves the proposal on the table, mentioning to them that they are free to choose their destiny. But, that said, with a convincing smile she declares that if they cross over to their side, they will have a better time than they think. After quite a while, we see them all walking together with our protagonist. The girl mentions that they took quite a long time deciding whether they would be his citizens, but she also emphasizes that both sides knew from the beginning which was their best option. Having said that, they arrive before the Dark Elves, who, yes, all of them see our Takuto with a very black aura. And here, to tell the truth, Takuto overdid it with the aura, for just by passing near one of the elves, that one fainted. Thus Takuto at last reaches his seat. Aoyu, as the voice of the king, explains to them that by the present they are welcomed and accepted as citizens. She asks her king whether it is all right, and Takuto confirms it to her, for with this they fulfill all the conditions. On hearing all this, Jay hesitated a little and asks himself whether the initiation ceremony as new citizens has perhaps already finished, but sooner rather than later the true effect arrives. Here he realizes how the hatred arises from within him, recalling the traumas of the past. The same happens with the other elves, for they recall how people pursued them, harmed them, and looked down on them like trash. But in the face of such rage and hatred as they feel, Takuto, the king of ruin, calms them, for as a ruler he worries that they be well. On hearing those words, Jia is gladdened, emphasizing that this is the happiness one feels when one is cared for. And thus all the dark folk praise King Takuto, and yes, even old Molter himself goes around crying. Well then, after several days since the founding of the kingdom of Mynoghra, Takuto finds out something bad, for on seeing the map of the continent that old Molter gave him, he throws an entire tantrum, for they started in a very bad location. Takuto explains to us that in this continent there already exist two great nations. On the left we have the nation of elves who venerate nature, and on the right the sacred kingdom of Qualia, who are humans who worship the god Arlos. Therefore, if either of the two were to find their evil nation that lies below, they would lose in terms of military might. Otto confirms this to him. But also, recalling that these cursed lands have not even a single natural resource, he also throws tantrums. And yes, Thus we see him like a little child on the floor. But Takuto quickly calms down, remembering that under normal conditions Mynoghra had a hard time researching, but now the Dark Elves can cover that weakness. So he quickly summons them. Here, before the King of Ruin, appear Old Molter, Gia, and Emil. Warrior Gia presents her as his assistant, an intelligent dark elf who knows many stories and other nations. Aloe and Lodo asks them not to be so formal. Gia apologizes. Therefore, Aoyu mentions to them that they will work in key posts for the administration of Mynoghra. Old Molder will evidently take charge of public affairs. Warrior Gia will continue as warrior chief and will guide the forces of Mynoghra. Likewise, he will take charge of recruiting personnel. At this, Gia is so happy that he stands up and promises, with a great smile, to annihilate any enemy, as well as to keep the corpse and display it in public. This frightens Takuto. As King of Ruin, he mentions to him that war is a barbarity. Otto shares this and mentions to them that her king prefers peace. Evidently, the warrior is now very confused, asking himself why the King of Ruin is a pacifist, but to this Old Molder laughs at him, which annoys Gia, for according to the stories that the old man himself told him, the King of Ruin would force the world to start from zero and would commit a heap of atrocities. But well, leaving those squabbles aside, or recommends to them that the first thing they must do is rest, and once they have recovered their health, they will begin to build houses. The elder Molta thanks her for these words, adding that his knowledge will be of great help, and not like the strength of Jean, of which that fool is proud. On hearing this, the warrior gets angry, calling him in his mind a filthy old man. Even so, he does not remain silent, and emphasizes before King Takuto that he is brimming with vitality, and not like that old man. Likewise, he has no need to rest. Em joins in on this, for she also likes to work hard. Seeing this, Otto mentions to her king that apparently these are workaholics, recommending that he send them to look for resources. Takuto thinks it over for a moment. After that, he indicates that the first thing would be to prepare the land. To Tom this seems good, so she asks the Dark Elves to obtain timber without affecting the forest too much. Faced with this request, Old Molter mentions to her that they will fulfill her wishes. Takuto is gladdened, but the warrior remains confused, asking himself whether by any chance the King of Ruin was not going to destroy the forest. At that, Takuto encourages them and mentions to them that they should not forget to reforest. On hearing that little word, the three elves are left puzzled. They ask him, with all respect, what he means by reforest. With just that, Takuto understands that the technological level of the people of this world is centered more on building fortresses. Likewise, he shows us a mental map of everything he knows, which goes from the most basic, which would be the 4 principal elements, to the most advanced in technology, which would be enhancement magic for genetics. Otto, with a bit of hope, asks whether at least they know military magic and the 6 principal elements. Molta emphasizes that they barely know the 4 elements, and he adds that he has never heard of the other nations making use of that so-called military magic. With all this, Takuto realizes that they are behind compared to other technologies, but for Otto, on the other hand, it means that they can surpass the other nations once they improve. But since they were getting off topic, he explains to them that to reforest is to plant trees in the harvested land in order thus to preserve the environment, emphasizing to them that this is very important if they want to secure resources in the future. Here he mentions to them that the current level of magical technology is not related to planting trees. Molter confirms it to him, for that very reason trees usually take centuries to mature. Thus, with all respect, he asks too whether by any chance she is implying that reforesting uses the principal elements to accelerate the growth of trees. She confirms it to him, for this is also wisdom brought by her great King Takuto, and that does not stop there, for his wisdom covers many more topics that they will come to know as time goes by. Thus she asks them whether by any chance they understand the good fortune they have to be in their king's favor. On hearing so many lavish praises, Takuto gets weird, for the social pressure itself makes his stomach hurt. Emma asks whether by any chance the apples were also created by their king. Otto confirms it to her, for to her, they are the most delicious. Alut, Takuto thinks of forbidding them to her for a time, but here she mentions something important, and it is that precisely of those grapes she mentions, she tried implanting their seeds and saw that they were already sprouting a little, so now she is only waiting for time so that they will ripen. On hearing this, Takuto is very astonished, emphasizing that he is a fool for not having realized it earlier, For with his emergency creation magic, he makes things appear that did not exist in the game. So, with this in mind, he makes an attempt to create a coin, which he succeeds in doing. Seeing this, he smiles, for he knows that with this power he can manufacture gunpowder, metals, and gasoline. Seeing Itu's worried face, Emil grows nervous, asking whether by any chance she should not have done it. Aoyu, with a tough girl face, absolutely denies this, for they simply overlooked it, and now rather she congratulates her, for she did a great job. At the very same time, Takuto's system grants him the next national trait called wine privilege, which allows him, with his emergency creation magic, to manufacture any food, strategic resource, and other elements that he knows. Although, yes indeed, the products of technologies not yet acquired will cost more magic in proportion to the complexity of the technology. Meanwhile, in a church, the saint who was playing the piano had a presage of the apocalypse in which she is warned that something is coming from the cursed lands of the Dark Continent. But then the cardinal interrupts her. He informs her that barbarians have appeared in the northern province. She knows she must take care of that first, for she cannot overlook such a situation. Thus, she tells the cardinal to march, for up to now only she knows that something is beginning to happen in this world. And indeed she was right, because on the side of the Dark Elves they have already begun with the reforestation. Elsewhere, the soldiers and the saints head for the northern province. On the way, one of the soldiers comments that he has heard rumors about the saint, for she possesses a special power. However, he has not seen anything different in her. On hearing that, the captain only replies that it is a matter of time before he understands. At that moment, they see how a horde of blue and ugly goblins approaches. The cardinal orders the Sonda to hurry. Thus we see how she resists a spell. She uses magic and wraps the goblins in flames and incinerates each and every one of those ugly monsters. Everyone is astounded to see such a magnitude of power. And the cardinal, in his mind, asks himself whether by any chance this is what is considered a saint, for to him she truly is a potentially dangerous weapon. When the monsters disappear, the sky shines. The soldiers ask themselves what on earth that was. Then we see how the patch of ground that was burned begins to regain its green color. The captain explains to his men that in part thanks to that power of the saint their nation can repel evil and maintain a cordial relationship with the elven people, for that power that they have just seen wraps their enemies in flames and bids them farewell with flowers, thus considering the saint to be one of the 7 saviors of the continent of Idarakia. The saints are lines of flowered burials. Here the cardinal informs the saint that he has sent the paladins to the nearest villages. She ignores this information and changes the subject on him. She asks him about what she spoke to him about on the road. The cardinal does not understand what she is referring to. Thus, she clarifies to him that she is referring to the presage of the apocalypse from the cursed lands, for they should send paladins to investigate. The cardinal rejects her request, very angry, arguing that it is absurd to take an interest in the cursed lands of the Dark Continent. Moreover, he knows that the central province will not yield its paladins for that. The saint mentions that if that is so, she will have to go personally to investigate. The cardinal mentions to her that she is no longer the villager she once was, but here she throws him a cold look. Faced with that, the cardinal realizes that she does not intend to change her mind. So he agrees to send those who are under his own command. The blonde is gladdened by this answer. The cardinal withdraws and, in a low voice, insults the saint by calling her the little peasant girl. But she, looking over the scene, only mentions that she has to save them. We change panels. In the Cursed Lands, Otto tells the Dark Elves that it is now time to have fun building things. They happily agree. After a while, Aoyu shows Takuto the throne and the council hall that everyone made for him and thanks them for such an action. But Tala clarifies that that is not all, for he plans to strengthen the civilization in order to then dominate all the lands and pierce through the heavens. At that moment, the ministers of the people arrive. Otto thinks of beginning the meeting, but before anything else, they hand new clothes to Takuto. On trying them on, he celebrates, since he will not have to keep wearing those pajamas. He asks that they begin the meeting. Molter asks about the buildings that they should construct first. She orders that at the start they will prioritize food production buildings in order thus to keep the population fed. Molter questions her decision, asking whether their kingdom can create unlimited food. Otto highlights to him that that works for now, but as they grow they will have to distribute it, and that will be a whole problem. Mulder recognizes his mistake, so he apologizes for his lack of vision. Aoyu tells him that it is no problem, since after all they have something. Having said that, she takes out a little tree. They are frightened a bit and beg her, please, for a brief explanation with regard to that. A tells them that that thing will be one of the food-producing buildings. She details that it is a meat tree that produces mysterious meat that tastes like human meat. It produces it in large quantities, and since technically it is meat, it will provide excellent nutrition. Molter doubts that all the inhabitants will accept eating human-like meat, but Aoba clarifies that they will only plant them to see how it goes. At that, our Takuto receives a system message in which it is marked as a mission to build a meat tree, which he accepts. O adds that for this they will need a command post and some warehouse to store food. She undertakes to build the warehouse, and thus they finish with that topic. Moving on to another very important one. Yes, with regard to research, O mentions that, being a small nation, they must obtain modern technology as soon as possible. Mulder asks about the kind of technology that they should prioritize, to which O replies that obviously magical technology, being specifically military magic, for although ordinary magic only attacks a dozen people at a time, military magic will allow them to attack entire armies and thousands of people. But not only that, for they will also be able to change the terrain at will and take advantage of other strategic uses. Molter is astonished to hear that such magic exists, but too comments that to research that they will need several geniuses of magic. Takuto adds that it is not complicated at all, so they should be able to develop it quickly. Mulder, quite excited by the new challenge, agrees to take charge of those geniuses, and thus another mission is added to Takuto's system. Lastly, they touch on the subject of military plans. Jay, happy that it is his turn, mentions that first they should organize an army. Here Takuto calms him and tells him that for now they will not strain themselves in that aspect. The elf is discouraged. Yes, so much so that his little ears droop. O underscores that an army does not produce. On the contrary, it consumes resources. Moreover, in idle time it is costly to maintain. Jia tries to refute this, mentioning that their current forces are not sufficient to protect their king. Molter joins the conversation and tells them something important that they must know. And it is that both he and Jia are wanted for being the leaders of the Dark Elves. Otto, seeing that they are worrying about their pursuers, thinks up something. Oh, Takuto proposes creating a hero. This seems perfect to the woman, since although it is somewhat costly to create one, when it comes to maintaining it, it does not cost much. The Dark Elves ask him what he means by a hero. Otto explains to them that in Mynoghra there exist several heroes. Each one serves the king. They are very powerful beings who possess special abilities, although they are a little crazy monsters. She adds that to summon them one must meet certain requirements, so it is only a matter of time to summon one. Takuto mentions that a hero would be the most suitable in order to continue going unnoticed. Thus he promises to create one so that they may be more at ease. Takuto explains to us that in his nation they gather a portion of the magic of their citizens, thus forming the country's mana, which is increasing at a good pace. But, yes indeed, what they gather is proportional to the people's happiness. That is to say, the happier they are, the more they will develop their nation. Thus, determined, Takuto sets out to make his people as happy as possible. Now we move to the cathedral. The soldier Lonius was praying, but he is interrupted by his superior. This one orders him to hurry. Lonius reminds him that that place is for praying to God, so he asks him to please keep silent. The superior notices that he has a pendant, but Lonius hides it quickly. The superior asks him whether by any chance he is using his wedding band as a protective amulet, although he remembers that he also has a daughter, so he asks him for her name and also his wife's. Here Lonius clarifies that she has nothing to do with the mission, but the man underscores to him that he is being asked by a high-ranking paladin. With no other alternative, Lonius tells him that his wife's name is Marsh and his daughter's is Mina. The paladin tells him that they will be traveling for a few days, so if he happens to say their names in his sleep, he will have to deal with him. Lonius does not play along and keeps walking, for he has heard many rumors saying that that fellow is, yes, rude and ill-mannered, but also about his abilities and achievements, which are truly impressive, so he cannot object to him. Here the superior paladin asks the reason why they were sent to the Dark Continent. Lonius reminds him that they were asked to investigate a revelation of the Saint Solina, and if they do it well, the Congress of the Southern Provinces will congratulate him. Although in his mind, he knows that if they fail, all the blame will be thrown on him for being of lower rank. Then the superior questions the fact that they have sent few forces. That is supposed to be a revelation of the saint, since only he and Lonius are paladins and the others are simple mercenaries. Lonius explains to him that to investigate abroad is something unusual, so one never knows how many troops to send. But in the same way, both share one opinion, and it is that it is difficult to know what the High Command is thinking when one works in secret. Lonius thinks that perhaps there must be some good reason to have placed him alongside that man, although he also knows that with him, he has a better chance of surviving. We return to Takuto's kingdom. He sets himself to appreciating the views of his entire realm, thus recalling how in the game he had already seen before how civilization blossomed. Emil points out to him that they already have the residential area, although they have not advanced that much because they prioritized the meat trees. She indicates that they already have the Institute of Magical Research and that the one in charge of it is the Elder Molter. She also mentions to him that they discovered a nearby spring as a water source. Therefore, they plan to build an aqueduct. Lastly, there is Takuto's building, which will be the nation's administrative office. After seeing all this, Takuto remembers how he found them for the first time, for all the dark elves were skinny, but now they are fuller of life. He tells them that all of this is a marvel and that he is very happy to have made them his citizens. On hearing this, the little elf girl bursts into tears of happiness, but after calming down, she regains her composure and offers to give him a tour of the city. She shows him the harvest of meat trees. Likewise, she thanks Takuto for providing them with the necessary tools. Then one of the trees moves and announces that it is almost ready. Faced with this, M is pleased, but Otto informs him that that means they will have food to feed the entire population of Mynoghra. Here M offers to show him the water source she found, but on arriving, she sees the spring with a somewhat malignant color. Then G and Molter also arrive to plan the construction of the aqueduct. M informs them that that water is no longer drinkable. Molter confirms this on seeing its color, but Otto calms them and, taking a sip, explains to them that that is called cursed terrain, the proof that the land is already part of their domain. Here Takuto asks them to take a deep breath. They do as he says. Then they feel how their minds sharpen and their bodies fill with strength. Aoyu explains that cursed terrain grants benefits to evil beings and harms neutral and good beings. But since they now are part of Mynoghra, neutral to evil, the elves understand that now they not only live in a safe place, but also in a more comfortable land. Takuto mentions to them that cursed terrain is perfect for defending themselves, and soon it will also change all the land of the nation. ATU underscores that this is also thanks to the king's power, although there is a little problem, and it is that with all this they will attract attention. Mulder mentions that although for the moment they can watch over this zone, if the whole region turns like this, enemies will discover it with ease. Here he makes a last attempt and proposes that they should form an army. To Mulder this seems a good idea, but Otto calms them by mentioning that very soon their king will create a hero. Although on hearing this, the elves still do not understand what she is referring to. Seeing their reactions, it tells them that it will be faster if they see it in person, for since several days have already passed since they arrived, it is sufficient time to fulfill the conditions. Faced with this, everyone is frightened. Aoyu, from behind her back, draws forth several tentacles that easily cut the trees. She reveals to them that she is also a heroine, and that is only 1/100th part of all her power, for the Hees can annihilate armies completely on their own. Takuto adds that the Hees grow stronger over time, even if they do nothing. All this leaves the elves astonished. Their Jia asks whether Miss Tu will be even stronger in the future, which our Takuto confirms. But to Tu he says that as long as they remain isolated. Akita Kudo turns to Tu and scolds her for having destroyed the forest just to demonstrate her power. As punishment, he assigns her to replant the area. A little sad, accepts that punishment, but Jia and company offer to help her. After seeing all this, Mulder suggests that they build a palace worthy of a king. Takut at first refuses, but after so much insistence from the Dark Elves, and recalling the benefits of it, he ends up agreeing. Takuto mentions to them that in the future he would like to have a floating castle, that very same one that is built upon reaching the highest level. The elves ask him what he is referring to. Then Takuto explains to them that it is a city that flies through the sky. To the elves this is unimaginable, but recalling that their king has materialized everything he has said, they kneel and swear that they, the Dark Elves, will have loyalty to him for all eternity. Now we move to the soldiers of the humans' kingdom. The mercenaries see how Lonius and his superior finished off all the monsters easily without their help. Here the superior orders them to advance, but Lonius, somewhat pensive, only hopes that everything continues just as well when they enter the Dark Continent. They continue with the mission. As they were advancing through the forest, the superior congratulates Lonius for deciding to hire so many mercenaries. The blonde thanks him and mentions that he just had good luck, since most of the mercenaries are in the north because of the disturbances. He says that the barbarians suddenly appeared in the northern province of Quelia and laid waste to the villages, and they sent the saint and the army to recover control. It still does not seem that the disturbances are going to abate. Just then, however, a mercenary tells them that a certain rumor says that in the north everything is very bad. Laos orders him not to stick his nose into the matter, but the mercenary answers that even if he tells him that, it is not their problem. The superior asks him whether by any chance he does not intend to go, for he heard that they pay very well. Bargo replies that no matter how well they pay him, he does not intend to go near it now that he knows that there is a witch there. This confuses Alonius a little, but the superior suggests that they forget the north and rather go south to the cursed lands. Besides, they do not know what awaits them there, so he advises them not to get distracted. Nevertheless, Lonius is not at ease with that last bit of information. Well then, afterward we see the soldiers in a bar. Lonius, unable to hold back his curiosity any longer, asks Bargo about the witch, but he replies that it is only a rumor, since it is said that a witch was the cause of the northern uproar. Lonius considers this ridiculous, since the saint also headed toward that place, so it is impossible for him that it be the work of a single person. Bargo thinks the same and tells him that they are just heretics' tales. The superior silences them both and orders them to stop talking about depressing topics. Being drunk, the superior asks for another round of drinks. Bargo questions his drinking so much, but the superior advises him not to worry about trifles and adds that God himself told them, "Strip yourselves of your vestments when you get home after caring for others' suffering." From which he understood that when they finish the job, they should relax. Here Ilonius reminds him of the doctrine of the god Arlos, in which it is said that at home and with the family they are exempted from their sacred duty, but they are not given permission to drink. The superior asks him whether it is necessary to talk about religion at this very moment, but just then his order arrives, so he pays it no more attention and keeps drinking. Then they continue their conversation. Bargo mentions to Lonius that in this mission they have just sent 2 holy knights to investigate something. On top of that, in the cursed lands of the Dark Continent, so surely it is something important. If so, he hopes it has nothing to do with a witch. And when he was just about to add something else, the superior interrupts him and clarifies that it is not anything important, although he does more or less know what it is. Bargo asks him what he is referring to. Then the superior reminds him that the dark elves fled toward those lands, and for that reason their leader is worried that they might be making trouble there. Bargo's is a little relieved, and they agree that they cannot leave them alone, since, at the end of the day, the Dark Elves are experts in curses and assassinations. Just then Lonios asks what would happen if, being hidden, they become stronger and decide to attack them. The superior advises him not to worry too much, since this time they are only going to investigate, and, in case things get ugly, they only have to flee the place. Bargo supports his plan, but Lonius challenges him and asks whether he believes that is how the vanguard of God should act. For, if they were to encounter evil, they ought to eradicate it. Here the superior speaks to him seriously and recommends that he not be thirsty for glory, for the moment when they have to eliminate them will come, but he cannot decide that so lightly. He reminds him that both he and the other mercenaries in this place have families, so they have a reason not to die. But seeing that he is already turning into a bitter old man, he decides to change the subject and liven up the night. He stands with his tankard and shouts to all the boys to seize the moment and drink all they can before going to the Dark Continent. Luz is disappointed, and, grasping his pendant, he prays to the god Arlos for protection. Meanwhile, in our protagonist's nation, all the elves were expectant about what was about to happen. Then Lu, a little nervous, asks whether something is approaching. Gia confirms it to her, since there is a reason why their king gathered them all together. Seeing that they are talking too much, Molta silences them and announces that it is about to start. Thus we see Takuto before a mountain of fruits from the meat tree. He begins with the spectacle, and after a while, from among the fruits, another long leg emerges. Everyone is astonished to see such a feat. Molter asks him whether he truly is capable of creating new life, but Takuto only smiles, which only leaves the old man trembling. Otto, proudly, exclaims that it is the power of their monarch, King Takatwara. She clarifies to them that his kind still harbors far more power, whereby their dedication and their happiness will grant more powers to their king. Having said that, she orders all the Dark Elves to show devotion to King Takuto. Everyone shouts with euphoria, thus unlocking in the system a new unit, the Long Leg. After such a demonstration, Takuto was together with two on his throne. He is glad that everything turned out well. The girl also congratulates him on his work and adds that she is also happy to have used normal production. Takuto agrees with her and mentions to her that fortunately the Dark Elves accepted all this without a peep as soon as they saw him smile. Then he remembers the other matter and asks her what will happen with it. A answers him that it was only to be supposed that it would not be as simple as pouring mana into the resource and having everything turn out well. Thus she decides to change the subject and mentions to him that with that ritual they have already confirmed that they can produce new units, which means that they will be able to summon a hero. Although, well, they need a large amount of mana. Takuto comments that with two heroes among them, they will have sufficient strength to fight. Here, Ada asks him about the hero he is considering summoning. Our black-haired boy answers her that he plans to summon Isla, the queen of insects. Aoyu asks him whether he does not think that she is very overpowered. Takuto tells us that the queen of insects has the aspect of an insect and is one of the beings of Mynoghra. Moreover, she is capable of granting power to all insect units, and with her the long legs will be excellent combatants. She can even produce larvae units that serve for work, thus being the perfect heroine for war and for domestic affairs. Otto congratulates him for deciding to summon Isla to increase the workforce and thus grow stronger, since in the face of so much uncertainty, the most reasonable thing is to adopt a safe strategy. Takuto replies that of course, although he also did it because the other heroes have horrible personalities, so Al is his only choice. Otto grants that he is right, for almost all of them want to sow chaos and dominate the world. Takuto adds that summoning them now would be a bit problematic, but even so he would like to meet them in the future. Moreover, he cannot dispense with their abilities either, so someday they will summon them, but he only hopes that they will not give them too many problems and that they can live in peace. We move to the soldiers of Quelia. These, on the road, ran into a giant in the hills. Lonius, seeing that monster, supposes that it was the least to be expected in the Dark Continent. Their Bargo asks for help to take care of it, but the superior stops them and tells them that he will handle it. Lonius asks him whether he is sure, to which he replies that yes, for they also cannot afford to waste time in this place. Thus we see him approach the giant and, standing before it, he draws his sword. He orders the others not to do anything that could distract the giant. Everyone remains expectant before the battle. The giant becomes enraged, but the superior does not retreat. He performs the prayers to his god to bless his sword, and then it begins to shine. Bargo asks whether that is an art of the sacred sword. Lonius confirms it to him and explains that it is Quelia's secret technique of infusing prayers into the blade and asking God to help them. Thus the fight begins. The paladin prepares to strike. When the giant tries to crush him, the superior cuts its mace in half. A Colonius tells us that the divine power boosts the strength of the holy knights, and the power to put an end to evil floods the body. Lastly, he adds that that is the power of a high holy knight, who is at the same level as a lesser dragon. Now we see how the paladin, with a leap, cuts the giant to pieces, while Lonius mentions that a hill giant obviously would not be a match for him. Everyone is fascinated to see such power. The blonde congratulates his superior on the job and tells him that with that power they will surely complete the mission without setbacks. Here the superior steps aside and answers him that he would not be so sure of that. We pass now to Takuto and Atu. The little lady asks him whether he truly intends to eat that sandwich and not something healthier. But Takuto answers that he is already fed up with healthy food, since in the hospital, he always ate healthy things. What is more, he worries about her on seeing her eat only salads. Aoyu answers him that she does it because they are in accord with her tastes. Here Takuto decides to change the subject and mentions to her that that place is starting to be incredible. O asks him whether he means the materials for the palace, but, knowing that yes, they agree that the Dark Elves are working extremely hard. With that, something comes to Takuto's mind. He asks her that, when she finishes eating, she call Molter and the others. Otto asks him about the topic he will address. Then Takuto tells her that thanks to the long legs he can already see the surroundings of the forest, so he would like to ask her what to do. Ao questions whether they should also take care of the surroundings of the forest. She asks him whether by any chance he is referring to the city that is nearby. Then Takuto confirms it to her and asks whether they are not part of Qualia. Otto mentions to him that they are not, since Quali is much farther to the north. Therefore, that city simply seems neutral and is located to the east. So they should decide how to proceed with them, since surely they will be the first to learn that they exist, for those neighbors are very close by. Takuto feels more relieved on learning that they are neutral, since, if they were good, they would not be able to negotiate. Otto answers him that he is absolutely right, for whoever comes would surely be a problem. Takakuto asks her not to worry too much, since there are still no signs that the existence of their kingdom is known. On hearing that, she asks him whether he knew that by saying that, he triggers an event. Takuto does not believe that that is true, but at that very moment he feels something and tells her that it would seem that someone is approaching. With a sigh, he mentions that it is a band of armed men who are coming toward the forest. He underscores to the woman that he would not like to draw attention, so he entrusts her with making them go away in a peaceful manner. But in case she cannot do it, she should do what is necessary. We change panels. The group of soldiers was standing at the entrance to the Cursed Lands. The paladin gives the order to advance, but a short time after walking, he orders them to halt. Lonius asks the reason, but just then they see how a woman appears from among the trees. The paladin orders them to stop and to explain what they are doing in the Cursed Lands. The woman presents herself as a dark elf who fled to the forest in order to survive. She asks them the reason for their visit. The paladin refuses to answer before she does. He proceeds to ask her what she is doing in the forest. Then the woman answers him that she lives together with her people who suffered the same fate. Here the paladin chooses to focus on what is essential. He asks her whether she will allow them to enter the forest. However, the woman suggests to him that they not do so and that they should rather leave. Lifting her gaze makes the man understand the situation. Lonius exclaims that they are men of God, but he is immediately silenced by the paladin, who clarifies to him that he is the one speaking. This annoys Lonius, and he asks himself in his mind whether he really deserved such a reprimand, seeing as he had barely opened his mouth. The paladin explains to the woman that they have come to do a job, and they cannot leave just because the dark elves do not like it. The mysterious woman mentions to him that her people are afraid, that they have suffered a great deal, and that they traveled for a long time to find a place where they can live in peace. Thus, she asks them to please understand her. The paladin, seeing how insistent she is, asks her whether there is something in the forest, but the woman answers that there is not, and rather one could ask the same thing of them. Thus she questions them about the reason why they are so obsessed with this so very dreary forest. Here the paladin exclaims that they have come for a divine revelation in which it was said that in those lands the calamity dwells. So he does not intend to leave without verifying its veracity. All those present are left astonished at what he said. Here Lonius underscores to him that that was the revelation of a saint and that it was a state secret. Therefore he questions him as to why he told that woman. But the paladin silences him and clarifies that at that moment it is all the same that it is a secret. Lonius refuses to accept it, for sharing a revelation without permission is a grave sin. And no matter that he is a high holy knight, his authority has a limit. He assures the paladin that he will inform his superiors of that. But to all those words the holy knight pays no mind and tells him to do as he wishes. The woman asks them whether by any chance they are worried about a calamity. The paladin confirms it to her and adds that they would like to enter to verify whether it is true. Once again, the mysterious woman apologizes and forbids them to pass. Everyone is perplexed, but Lonius is confused, for she is denying it in spite of knowing that they have come for a divine mission. The hooded one lifts her gaze, and, letting her reddish eyes shine forth, she underscores to them that in these lands there is nothing that they ought to worry about. So she hopes that they will understand, and once more she asks them to depart. Suddenly Lonius feels an evil energy. With that he ends by confirming that the revelation is true and that in that forest there is something they must find no matter what. The paladin asks again whether such a calamity does not exist and whether it is not possible that that very thing might affect his people. The woman guarantees to him that he has nothing to worry about, since in any case they, too, would fear it. As a last request, the paladin asks her to swear it before God. Then the hooded woman answers him, "I swear it by my God." Faced with the woman's answer, the paladin decides to withdraw. Lonius challenges him, for he felt an evil energy in her. Thus he asks him whether by any chance he intends to believe someone like that. The superior confirms it to him, for trusting is the base of the Arlo's doctrine. He underscores to him not to let fear cloud his brain, and with that he repeats that in this place there is nothing, and that is the result of this investigation. He quickly orders the other mercenaries to withdraw. However, Lonius does not intend to desist, and, disappointed, he removes authority from the paladin Wordle for abandoning the mission. WL asks him whether by any chance he is not taking it all far too seriously, but Lonius asks him the very same question and challenges his decision after having told the revelation as well as the fact of wanting to leave without investigating. He asks him whether he is not making a mockery of the divine will, for if that is so, he cannot entrust the mission to someone like him. Therefore, from this very moment he has decided to assume command. He informs all the mercenaries that they will enter the cursed lands and will investigate to verify whether the calamity exists. Bargo accepts the order, but Warder tries to stop him. Nevertheless, Bargo, somewhat depressed, reminds him that it was Lonius who hired them. At that moment the woman intervenes and asks them not to act rashly without speaking first. Lonius orders her to keep silent and be quiet, and he warns her that if she decides to hinder them, he will have no mercy whatsoever when it comes time to arrest her. Wide demands that they stop. However, no one obeys his orders. The mercenaries begin to surround the woman. She, seeing that she has failed, knows that she has no other choice. What we see next is Alonio waking up, and the first thing he hears is Wordle asking him whether he is all right. The blond man gets up, and, understanding nothing, turns to look at the place, thus being able to see Wardell protecting him and the bodies of all his mercenaries hanging from the tentacles. Yes, the tentacles of the mysterious woman, who is evidently Satu. Word warns him that they have just encountered a witch, but the blonde simply remains petrified with fear. Otto, taking off her disguise, mentions that it is a pity to end things like this when everything was going so well, but she supposes that in life not everything always turns out well. All of this was being observed by Takuto, who confirms Otto's words. He orders one of his soldiers to send someone to inform the kingdom, but he only receives the reply that all the messengers died in the previous attack. Oh, with a condescending attitude, tells them that they found the monster they were looking for, only then to drop the cadavers right in front of the soldiers. The blonde is on edge, but Warden calms him, and, seeing that they have no way out, orders the rest of his troops to prepare for combat. Otto, seeing this, asks herself whether they really are going to attack her, but Gardel, knowing that they cannot lose, orders them to loose their arrows. Aoyu, with a smile, blocks all the attacks, then, with a pleased smile, tells them that they have no mercy in attacking her. But that is fine, because she loves that. The blonde cannot believe it, and Wardens curses her, for he does not know how things came to this point, when everything was going so well. Ao, hearing this, grants that he is right, for she also regrets having come to this situation, and with a sigh she adds that it is all the blonde's fault for having dragged out his stupid devotion and for meddling where he does not belong. Lord New Alberla is so frightened that he thinks that that woman is a witch. For that reason he asks Wardell what a witch is. WL reveals to him that the superiors told them that this ought to be a secret, but now it is no use. He explains that when the saint receives a revelation and the chiefs confirm it, they call witch the monster that arose from the calamity. He also adds that a certain witch is the cause of the disturbances in the north, suggesting that that albino must be of the very same kind. Here he asks the blonde whether he now understands the danger in which they find themselves, but Otto interrupts them and, mockingly, asks them whether they have finished their conversation already. WL, giving orders to his soldiers, launches the attack together with the blonde. At the same time they activate the blessing of their god, surrounding themselves with a golden aura. Otto, seeing that they approach for their strikes, with her tentacles, and with a smile, tells them that they are slow and have no power. Gardel, using more force, replies that that is not altogether true, then cuts through the defense of the tentacles, leaving Otto utterly surprised. Wordle, taking distance, tells Lornius that first they will deal with the tentacles. Thus they cut some. Otto, seeing one of her limbs cut, asks them whether they are using the blessing of a god for that divine strike, but she also knows that that gives them an attack bonus against evil beings. Here Otto reflects, for she knows that this is the problem with good civilizations. However, she is interrupted by an attack from Wardell, who cuts another tentacle. And now, with only 3 left to her, Otto curses him, for she is in a pinch. Without wasting time, the blonde cuts another tentacle. And when Wel is congratulating Lornius, he notices that 2 tentacles pass near him, heading toward the mercenaries. Otto now has them captured. Ukawil mentions to them that she has underestimated them, since after all they are paladins, and putting them in a bind with the 2 bodies in front, still alive. She asks whether by any chance they will be able to strike. Seeing them hesitate, she rejoices and, jeering, adds that that is why she adores humans, for they love each other so very much that they are the perfect shields. Hearing this, the blonde curses her. But Wordle, keeping his composure, mentions to him that only 2 tentacles remain, and if they cut them, they could win. Lord understands this, but he is still burning hot in the face of such a complicated situation. Wel clarifies that if they defeat her, they will eradicate the calamity, and their homeland will not suffer any harm, asking him to think about what matters to him more. On hearing it, the blonde understands. Both prepared, they launch the attack, leaving Otto surprised and asking herself why they are drawing near. But then she sees how the paladins cut the tentacles, and likewise the hostages. And when it seems that two is cornered, with a sinister smile, she pierces Wordle with several tentacles. Lornius, seeing this, cannot comprehend what is happening. Seeing how Otto drops Wordle's body, the blonde, terrified, asks how it is possible if they had cut all the tentacles. Aoyu, mocking his naivety, questions him as to when she told them that she only had 6 tentacles. With a smile she makes it plain that she can replace them as many times as she wishes. Hearing this, the blonde understands, disappointed, for Otto was playing with them the whole time. With their hopes lost, the blonde gives the order to scatter and to run for their lives, so that at least one will survive and inform the kingdom of everything that happened. The mercenaries, without wasting time, run off like chickens. At that, Tu is disgusted. The blonde launches his attack, but he is stopped by his own power, now in Tu's hands. Incredulous before this, he asks himself how it is possible. Aoyu, toying with the sword, mentions to him that she stole all the hard work and techniques of Wardell, launching dozens of strikes and pushing the blonde back, while she mentions that Wardell was worthy of being considered that strong. Here she provokes the blonde further, mentioning the name of his wife and daughter, which leaves him re-frightened. He asks how she knows it, and Otto, with a smile, reveals to him that she stole even the feelings and memories of Wardell. On hearing that, the blonde realizes that the more he attacks Tu, the stronger she will become. But his thoughts are interrupted when Tu exclaims that Wardell was quite heroic, and it does not surprise her that he was a high-level paladin, for he worried about everyone's safety to the very end. Then she asks Lornius what he feels after having heard all that. The blonde, nervous, replies that Walswell remains alive as long as he keeps her at bay, and the mercenaries who escaped carry the news to the kingdom. But here he is interrupted by the mercenaries' blood-curdling screams. He asks himself what happened. Otto tells him that it is the Dark Elves, for she asked them not to let a single one escape, and then they completely surround the blonde. Ao, mockingly, mentions to him that she never said she was alone. On hearing this, Lornius falls into madness, and, desperate, launches his last attack, but Ad, with a grim smile, awaits him and seizes him. Thus we see that OT is holding the paladin. Here, first she tells him how his future would have been if he had listened to Wordle, which would obviously have been a good one, for he would have been reunited with his family and would have enjoyed a peaceful life. Moreover, the inhabitants of the forest would also have found peace without ever fighting with them. Now she tells him the tragic future that he chose, for he will die. But as for his wife and daughter, she herself will torment them again and again until they beg for death. After that she will go to all the towns along which he came. She will kill them, and when the people ask the reason, she will mention that it is the fault of the stupidity of the paladin Lornius, and after telling them that, she will kill them, too. The blonde, in agony, begs her to stop, but far from listening to him, she leaves him a lesson, and it is that when people despise you, you are finished, so you had better kill them all when they do that. Once the lesson is finished, she explains to him that she taught that to someone very important, and that is what she will do with him. Loris, desperate, begs her not to do it. Otto, mocking, mentions to the blonde that surely he is a good person, for he believed in a god, he worked for his country, and he loved his family, which is worthy of admiration for someone. But for that very reason, she hates those who believe that they themselves are justice personified. Bidding farewell to the paladin with a sinister aspect, she asks him to watch them from his living seat in the sky, and to observe from above how his loved ones and other innocent people suffer atrocious deaths, then to torture him to death while she laughs. After Atu has finished her work, there remains only a pool of blood. Just then Gio arrives and informs her that they have already killed all those who escaped. Otto mentions that surely Takuto will be gladdened to hear that. As she departs, she asks them to take care of the corpses. But here she is stopped by an elf, who asks her whether she intends to carry out everything that she told the blonde, thereby provoking a tense moment. But she breaks the silence by mentioning that no, not in her dreams would she think of doing something so atrocious. After all, she is peaceful, and she was only torturing him a little bit. Hearing this, all the elves ask themselves whether by any chance that is what it is to be peaceful. Ao, realizing that she cannot waste more time, heads to Takuto's side. And seeing this, Jia asks her whether something worries her. Ao answers that yes, for there is something she must tell the king at once. At night, after he has heard everything, Takuto questions what witches are, for they are a kind that he does not remember being in the game. Atao confirms it to him, and she also mentions that it is increasingly clear that they are not in the world of the game. Akuto, realizing this fact, confirms his fear, for it would seem that they arrived in another world. All clarifies that up to now they were acting on the basis of the game, but from now on they ought to take into account that the world is different. Takuto sadly listens to that, for he was very good at that game, but she underscores that perhaps those differences will be to their advantage. Takuto asks her whether it is because of her ability. Otto confirms it to him. Takuto remembers that Aoyu's ability in the game assigned fixed options to her for stealing abilities from a unit that she defeated. AOW tells him that up to a certain point she was able to steal the memories of the defeated rivals, adding that it will be a great weapon to help in their plans. Takuto agrees, for thanks to that they now know what is happening in Qualia without having sent anyone. Otto confirms this. Likewise, she tells him that in Qualia they cannot send more forces thanks to a disaster that is happening in the north. Takut, hearing this, is gladdened, for they will be at ease for a time. Otto mentions that most likely they will attempt something after having been defeated, but Takuto mentions to her that there is no problem. After all, they know nothing about them, and if they were to attempt something, they would go with great caution. But what worries them more is the origin of the northern disaster, whose supposed cause is also a witch. Otto confirms that, according to the memories she obtained, it is so, but she does not know much, and apparently not even Qualia knows much about that witch. But what she does know is that she has caused damage comparable to that of an army, and also her name, for that which is called Arikino, the Slug Witch. Elsewhere, a bolt of lightning falls before the enemies. This leaves them dead. The one responsible for this lightning is a humanoid cow, who now orders her subordinates to collect the bodies, and she is heading out. But when she was about to depart, she is stopped by a scream of fright. She turns around to see what is happening, noticing that the corpses have stood up again. Everyone is astonished, for it is something they have never seen. Lady Vaga begins to give orders, preparing for the imminent combat. At the same time, she sends a messenger to inform the rest, and while she sees the corpses drawing near, she only asks herself what on earth is happening. Back in the forest, Ao is about to leave, but she stops. Nervously, she tries to say something to Takuto. She mentions to him that she feels as if she ruined the moment for him, for she believes that she overdid it a little with the paladins. Takuto shows no reaction upon seeing what she did, for, better than anyone, he understands the gravity of the events. Atu, realizing that it does not seem to matter to him, looks at Takuto, and for a moment she sees him as everyone sees him, a being made entirely of darkness. But Teiko, with a calming smile, tells her that nothing she does will offend him, for he trusts her very much, and he asks her to keep helping him. Ao, very moved and proud, tells him not to doubt it, for she will do her very best. Then she asks him to order her to do anything whatsoever, and, more motivated than ever, she gives a small demonstration of her strength, while Takuto watches her with a smile as she does her little taps. Elsewhere in the forest, the elf girls continue with their activities, while two little elven girls, holding hands, watch them sadly, asking themselves the reason for being alive, for they do not want to have a purpose. Elsewhere, Takuto and Atu happily watch the completion of their palace. Inside already, she mentions that there is still a great deal lacking, but they will improve it in the future. With this, Takuto agrees. Excited, she tells him her idea for the future concerning the kingdom they are building, for she envisions a palace that stretches up to the heavens and has its roots down to the depths of the earth, Moreover, his vassals will be heroes, and an infinity of women will serve Takuto. These words thrill our boy, but then Atu realizes that they do not have any woman to take care of Takuto's needs, even though he mentions to her that that does not matter much to him. Aoyu insists that she has failed as a servant and wants to get at least one. Then she asks him whether he has any particular preference. Takuto, visibly nervous, for it is hard for him to communicate with other people, asks her for a girl with whom it will be easy to talk. He adds that he feels isolated because he cannot talk with the Dark Elves and that he wants to be a kindly king. Hearing this, Otto suddenly gets an idea, something that worries Takuto, for out of Tu's ideas nothing good ever comes. Yes, our protagonist catches a cold. A few minutes later, the leaders of the elves gather with Takuto. Otto immediately orders Molter to summon all the little girls, since their mighty king wishes to see them. In her mind, Ta tells us that her magnificent plan is based on having the girls serve as Takuto's attendants and converse with him. Molter, bewildered, asks her the reason. Then Tu, with complete assurance, tells him that her king likes little girls. Yes, Lotta chose the worst possible words to express herself. Here the leaders are left dumbfounded on hearing this, but seeing that Takuto is annoyed, Otto clarifies the situation, and after explaining, Molter only laughs, for it merely turned out that Takuto wishes to surround himself with innocent children so as not to be swept along by the general mindset, something that, personally, he finds fabulous. Otto mentions that there is one more reason, for since they are still short-handed, the adults cannot. Therefore the little girl will only have to take care of the king's needs, something she considers quite easy. Takuto clarifies that what O mentioned is not all, for he also thought of having them study for the good of the future of his kingdom, and thus to see more women achieving success. However, Takuto reveals to us in his mind that this is a kindly little lie. The elves praise him for fostering the girl's future. Otto orders them to bring the little ones at once. Takuto, very excited, promises to do his best to learn to communicate. However, when the little ones see him, absolutely all of them begin to cry. This deals an emotional blow to Takuto. Otto, quite annoyed, asks the elven leaders whether they have no girls who will not cry upon seeing him. Molter apologizes, saying that those were all of them, but Jia, in a low voice, asks the elder whether it is a good idea to bring the twins. Molter does not think it right to do so. Then O asks what they are talking about so very quietly. The elder explains that there are two twins who have no family, and although they are quite intelligent, there is a little problem. Therefore he does not think they are fit to serve the king. This matters little to Tu, so she orders them brought. Jia intervenes and mentions that he has already brought them. Yes, very efficient, that Jia. Here the elder questions him for doing it without warning, but Jia underscores that he always goes 2 or 3 steps ahead and is not like the elders. Molter is vexed, but Otto calms everyone and orders that they be called and brought to the hall. After a little while, 2 elf girls arrive. She introduces herself as Kia Elfer, the younger sister, and Maria Elfer, the elder sister. Otto greets them, a bit nervous, but, looking closely at them, she mentions to her king that they seem to have a dark past. Then she asks Korea how she got the marks she has. She replies that it is because of an illness, which draws pity from Takuto. Noticing this, Korea admits that she deserved it. Then the old Molter intervenes. He clarifies that her marks are due to a plague, but that now she is cured and only has that scar. Now Tu asks what about the elder sister. Then Korea mentions that Maria went through something very cruel, but just then, out of nowhere, Maria, with a somber look, tells them that she ate her own mother. This fact leaves them shocked. Thus Tu asks Molter for more details. He tells her that the mother of both of them was a woman of whom they are proud and whom they will never forget for her sacrifice. On hearing this, Takuto immediately understands and recalls that the Dark Elves were driven from their home and had to set out on a long journey without food. That also entailed making very harsh decisions, for they faced hunger. Seeing them, Ta likes that they are brave and do not run away upon seeing Takuto's aspect, but her thoughts are interrupted. When Maria approaches the king, she, with a smile, begins to speak to him. Then Takuto naturally converses with her. He asks whether she is willing to serve him, mentioning that it will be hard and that she will have to learn many new things. Maria, although a little pensive yet glad, accepts. This whole conversation surprises Tu, for Takuto is speaking with her normally. Takuto asks Korea what she thinks. She answers that her duty is to stay with her sister, and if her sister has decided to do it, she will strive alongside her, something that Atudo does not like, asking her to stay to serve him as well. When everyone leaves the hall, Mulder tells Takuto something important. Those two girls have not cried since their mother died, so he asks him to be patient and to take care of them. Days later, we see Maria bringing water to Takuto, but as she comes rushing in, she spills it on him. Takuto, with a smile, tells her not to worry. Carrie immediately begins to clean him when suddenly Tu arrives, asking whether by any chance it happened again, showing that this has already happened many times. But leaving that aside, she informs Takuto that he has a meeting in which the girls will also attend. Then, looking at them, she asks them not to mess things up. In another room, they handle national affairs, beginning by asking the head of construction for a report. Lu rises and informs them that, having finished the palace, she has labor to spare, and, having lumber in excess, they are ready to build another building. Atao understands, and, together with Tutu, mentions that the next project will be a clinic so that the citizens may be healthy and safe. Otto proceeds with the subject of resources and asks who is in charge. Then M stands up again. Aoyu realizes that they lack a great deal of personnel. Immediately, Emil reports that the gathering of food and materials is progressing without setbacks. With Takuto's help, they have at their disposal the basic tools that they themselves cannot manufacture. However, since all that consumes magic, there is an imbalance between the inflow and outflow of resources. Otto mentions that using mana for emergency productions is very useful, and, despite the consumption of mana, they will continue to use it because they need it, but they must prioritize buildings and research that increase mana. After mentioning all this, she congratulates M on her work, then goes on to ask about research. Mulder reports that they have already finished researching military magic, and although right now only he can use it, it will not take long before his apprentices can as well, it being crucial that they possess potent magic with the mana of ruin that the palace provides them, although he doubts that they will use it much given Takuto's policies. Atu confirms it, mentioning that military magic is very useful but not of much help in domestic affairs. And, giving instructions on research, she tells them to advance with the 6 great elements of the magic tree, for the other researches will not bring them great benefits. On hearing this, Takuto thinks that they will focus on magic, but specializing in something concrete is an orthodox national strategy. I'll moves on to the next topic. The army, J, reports to them that he has 5 new long legs, and right now they are investigating the unknown zones of the forest. However, beyond the forest there are plains, so, since they do not want to draw attention, they cannot continue with a riskier reconnaissance. Otto is satisfied and mentions that, now, Takuto already knows everything that surrounds them, and they will have the Longlegs patrol the periphery of the forest. Jia asks whether he wants everyone to do that task. Otto, confident, replies that for the moment she alone will take charge of defending the nation, besides which they have decided to create a new hero. Takuto confirms this, saying that he plans to summon Isla, the queen of insects, which surprises those present. Now to asks about how the preparations for the summoning are going. Mulder reports that he already has sufficient timber and food, and that everything is already at the site where the ritual will be performed. The detail is that only the mana to do it is lacking. After this, the whole meeting continues normally. After a few hours they finish, all exhausted, and Takuto, observing them, is gladdened, for everyone is giving their very best. After the meeting, Takuto is accompanied by the twins to the throne room. By accident, Maria bumps into Takuto and the papers fall. Korea apologizes, but upon trying to help her sister, both of them end up tearing one of the sheets. Takuto tells them not to worry. There Maria asks them whether by any chance he is evil. Takuto confirms it to them. Faced with his answer, Maria asks why he does not kill them. Korea apologizes and clarifies that her sister only wants to know the reason why their king has so very much mercy on some little girls. Takut answers that it is because they are taking care of him. Seeing Maria angry, Carrie explains that she is like that because he is too good despite being evil. Takuto understands them, so he explains that a good person can only do what is right, do no harm to others, and do not steal, whereas evil people can do whatever they want. Yes, indeed, good things and bad things. Evil people are selfish and free at the same time. For that reason, he has decided for now to behave kindly toward them. Maria questions him whether he will not be punished someday. Takut argues that if beforehand he kills the good people who come to punish him, then nothing will happen to him. Akitakudo understands that both of them tore those sheets on purpose, for they thought that perhaps he would kill them as punishment. He grasps that they still have not forgiven themselves for having survived thanks to their mother's death. He approaches the girls and asks them to feel proud, for thanks to their mother's immense love, which was able to impose itself on fate, they are still alive. Here the twins ask him what they should do. Then, with a smile, Takudo stands, approaches both of them, and suggests that they live in such a way that their mother's love is rewarded, since in that way she, too, will be proud. Seeing their trembling eyes, he asks them not to hold back. Now the little ones, after a long time, cry until they fall asleep. After quite a while, Tu arrives at the hall to inform him of something, but Takudo asks her to keep silent and that they had better go elsewhere. In the council chamber, Otto details the situation to him. In a city of Fergaun, a neutral nation of humans and beast folk called Dragon Town, there is a parliamentary system that is governed by some shamans considered the bearers of the staff. Seeing that it is a nation with various races, Takudo infers that they have a variety of cultures and ideologies, so they could employ diplomacy. However, he considers that the city is a little isolated, something that confuses him, since being so far away makes it much more complicated to trade and to distribute goods. Otto mentions to him that apparently in the city there is a vein of dragon mine, and since those produce mana, if possible they should seize them. Moreover, it seems that the city is on maximum alert, something they confirmed from a distance, for they saw that ogres and barbarian goblins were attacking it, and it seems that it is very hard for them to defend themselves against those. Takudo asks her whether there is any possibility that their nation will send reinforcements. Aoyu reports that up to now they have not seen any, since, the city being quite remote, they perhaps cannot send relief. Takudo infers that there must be refugees, and if they were to take them in, perhaps they could increase their population, and in case they help them, the mine might even become theirs. Thus he plans to send diplomats to the neutral nation of Forgound, and, once and for all, to seize the vein of dragon mine. So we see two, accompanied by a group of dark elves, arrive at the city of Dragon Town. Lady Cow and the other citizens are on alert because of the sinister aura that Tu and the other dark elves are giving off. Aoyu orders her men to fall back, while Lady Cow says in her mind that if her soldiers keep looking at them, they could lose control to their instincts. Aoyu was already preparing to strike, but just then a little mage intervenes, who presents himself by the name of Pepe. Immediately Otto hides her tentacles. After this, we see them together on the way to Mynoghra. Otto mentions to Lady Cow that they did not expect that she, too, would want an audience with their king, for they also had sent a delegation to Dragon Town. Just then little Pepe, out of nowhere, begins to tell her everything they have lived through on the way to this place. Faced with that, Lady Cow apologizes to Aoyu for having brought that brat. To which, not to worry, Ted answers that there is no problem, but asks her whether it really was best to have left her men behind. Lady Cow explains to her that the miasma she gives off is far too strong for her soldiers, so she prefers that they wait outside. Meanwhile, in her mind, she asks herself what aspect that king whom they so adore will have. Upon arriving at Takudo's hall, as was to be expected, Ao presents him as the all-powerful king. Here Lady Cow grows quite worried, for she cannot use her appraisal ability on him, just as if he were darkness itself personified. Grasping the magnitude of the problem, she asks herself whether by any chance her decisions have led her to that point. She begins to remember that during the battle against the barbarians, little Pepe managed to bring down one of the enemies. However, he began to exalt himself without counting on the enemy getting up again. Now on the ground, Pepe could only watch as the barbarian was about to crush him. But at just that moment Lady Cow arrived, who, using her swamp magic, saved him. Although after finishing off the barbarian, she scolded him as well. Pepe, calling her grandma, was about to say something. She interrupts him and, striking him with her staff, reminds him not to call her grandma, but miss, as she is just in her 240s. Yes, quite young. Leaving that aside, she demands that he behave like a leader, since he is the only youth who has a staff. Pepe promises to do so. Lady Cow, seeing the carefree way in which he answered, cannot believe that she really is worrying about his future just as she is about to go to the cursed lands. Here Pepe asks her whether by any chance that is the place where they were going to go. Lady Cow tells him that of course, for the elders asked them to investigate the signs of the apocalypse coming from that place. Moreover, if the barbarians keep attacking them, sooner or later it will be their end. She explains to him that in Dragon Town they are in a tight spot because they cannot send the army, so they must hurry, since they do not know whether the cause comes from the cursed lands. Pepe, being a good boy, wishes her a good journey, but Lady Cow underscores to him that he is going with her right now, and, in spite of the news, Pepe only smiles at her. But now, in the present, Lady Cow laments not having ignored the elders and for having brought Pepe to such a dangerous place. Suddenly, the very same Pepe, in a peculiar manner, presents himself before Takuto and asks to be his friend. Lady Cow cannot believe he has done such a thing, so she quickly covers his mouth and begs Takuto to forgive him. This request for friendship leaves our protagonist pensive. After a few seconds of thought, Takuto agrees to be his friend. This surprises Lady Cow, but delights Pepe. Seeing that he has made his very first friend, he asks everyone to applaud. Lady Cow cannot quite grasp what is happening, but anyway, after a while we see them seated at a banquet. Upon tasting the apple juice, Lady Cow is fascinated by such a flavor. Meanwhile, little Pepe is wandering all around the hall, showing Molter the magic he can do. All of that is being watched by Takuto, who cannot believe what good social skills Pepe has, something he regrets, since he could not possibly imitate him. Although then he remembers that he has to speak with Fergown about important matters, he does not want to be so hostile either. Therefore he asks Pepe to play something, to which the little one gladly agrees. Thus we see them play various kinds of games. While they are chatting, Pepe asks him to sell that apple juice and those games to his country. Lady Cow warns him to behave, but Takuto agrees, since in any case they were going to trade with them. With the games finished, they decide to enter into diplomatic matters. Otto asks Lady Cow the reason why she is in this cursed forest. Lady Cow explains to her that the barbarians have attacked their country on repeated occasions. This seems quite strange to Otto, since as a rule the barbarians avoid large cities. Lady Cow grants the point, but adds that they are coming in enormous hordes, so they came to investigate it. Takuto, like the capable fellow he is, supposes that, with all that has been said, they have no military strength. This worries Lady Cow, for, now that her weak point is known, she will have no chance to negotiate. So she decides to lie, mentioning to him that in the end they managed to drive them off, and only showed somewhat strange behavior. Otto understands that it could be something too problematic to ignore. Lady Cow confirms it to her, but both she and Pepe, who are the two bearers of the strongest staves, came to investigate. Here little Pepe, visibly confused, asks whether by any chance they had not been sent to investigate because the country will die if they do not find out how to put an end to them. Faced with this, everyone in the hall is bewildered. Pepe turns to look at Lady Cow and asks whether he said something he should not have. Knowing this, Te clarifies that she has no intention whatsoever of harming Fergown, since they are focusing above all on domestic affairs. That is to say, they are an evil nation that loves peace, but with regard to the barbarians, they are also involved, since if Dragon Town falls, they will be next. Lady Cow asks them whether by any chance they are willing to help them, but in her mind she continues to distrust them, since she does not believe they will help without asking for something in return. Here Otto asks Takuto his opinion on the matter, to which he answers that friends are there to help one another. Lady Cow does not beat around the bush and asks what they desire in exchange, since, after all, thanks to foolish Pepe they could take advantage of them. Seeing now that they are willing to offer something in return, Otto proposes that they give them the vein of dragon mines. She underscores that it will suffice for them to administer them jointly, since right now they do not need much mana, but at some point they would like to be able to choose which element to convert it into. Lady Cow is taken aback upon hearing that they desire to convert the pure mana of the mine into concrete elements, for they would need at least 10 more years to develop that technology. Turning to look at Pepe, Lady Cow mentions to Takuto that Pepe is a fool, the greatest simpleton in the world. Nevertheless, he is the future of their nation and someday will be the leader of Fergown as representative and bearer of a staff. Moreover, he has a good eye for the people of their nation. For that reason, she will make the decision. Pepe, happily, accepts and reminds her that from the very beginning he had told her that he wanted them to be friends with the people of Mynoghra. After a long meeting, all the ministers of Mynoghra gather to recap everything agreed upon. M mentions that, according to the agreement, they will export provisions and toys to Fergown in exchange for importing daily use articles and metal goods. Molter underscores that having all that will be a relief, since up to now he has been depending too much on the king, and that would remove a great burden. Otto, on hearing that, voices support for his comment, since, moreover, they will have access to the vein of dragon mine. Mulder mentions that Pepe's slip turned out to be very timely, although he feels that his imprudence is something worrisome. Takuto grants that he is right, but in his mind he recognizes that, had it not been for Pepe, they would have negotiated in a far duller way. Takuto suggests that for now they leave Pepe aside and return to the central topic. Aoyu asks what policy to follow in their future relationship with Fergown. This arouses the twins' curiosity, so they ask what kind of country Fergown is, for they do not know. At that instant, everyone realizes that they are right, for they, too, do not know. Mulder underscores that, in order to develop internal relations, they must know more about their values and traditions. Takuto supposes that he is right, although he had not taken it into account. In his mind, he recalls that in the game one did not have to worry about those details. Otto agrees that they should investigate Fergown. However, bearing in mind that Groan, the capital of Fergown, is very far away, it will take quite some time to investigate it. Takuto recommends leaving that aside for now, since at this moment their priority is Dragontown. Mulder underscores to him that they are going to need a good reason to enter another country. Maria tells them that they will go to play. This leaves everyone bewildered. But Korea reminds them that that is what Pepe said. Takuto grants that she is right. Thus, he sets about sending people to present their respects before sending a delegation. Mulder offers to go, but Takuto begins to doubt it, since he is far too important for the nation. And Otto agrees with this, for although they see him as a wise old man, for others he is a chancellor and minister of magic. Mulder is a little angered by the first part, but he knows that she is absolutely right, for the same goes for Emil, whom they consider a general and minister of the interior. For that reason they will need someone whom he can trust, and who has no official post. On hearing this, the twins promise to work hard. Takuto doubts whether to leave them alone, bearing in mind the danger. But Mulder underscores that both of them are candidates for leadership, so it will be a perfect way for them to gain experience. Even so, Takuto hesitates to accept. Otto, seeing that he is quite worried, also offers to accompany them. Mulder rejects this, for she is the king's most loyal confidant. On hearing the word confidant, Otto grants him all the more reason, so she retracts it. Here the twins approach Takuto and remind him that he had said that both of them were free. Therefore, seeking his help is something they desire with their freedom, and they are willing to run the risk. Seeing that they do not intend to desist, Takuto ends up agreeing. On hearing this, Otto cannot believe that Takuto has really granted a request from someone other than herself. Miss Salvina feels very betrayed. Emil asks him whether he is really sure. Takuto reassures her, saying that he already knows how to protect them. After the meeting, Takuto, being alone, sees how Otto is going around annoyed. He tries to clear everything up, but she refuses to listen to him. What is more, she recommends that he abandon her and keep building his harem. Just then the twins arrive. Maria asks him to come closer and, in his ear, advises him to say what he feels. Takuto listens. He draws near Otto's ear and thanks her for everything she has done for him. Taking her by the hand, he confesses to her that she is the one and only for him. With that last part, he makes Otto imagine an entire life together. And, with everything now settled, Takuto takes the twins to the clinic. There he mentions to them that their protection for when they go to Fergown is in there. Otto asks whether by any chance he is referring to what she thinks, and Takuto confirms it to her, for these are the units he produced the other time. These, excited, greet their great lord Takuto with joy. Seeing that they are quite enthusiastic, Otto mentions to them that they have her approval as the subordinates of King Takuto, at which our protagonist confirms it, adding that, although he produced them to prepare for the worst, up to now he has had them doing nothing. At that point one of the twins, somewhat nervous, asks her lord who they are. He answers her that they are medics, but apart from healing wounds and illnesses, they also know how to fight, and they will protect them. Otto, addressing the medics, informs them that Takuto has something to say to them, so she asks them to pay very close attention. He begins by telling them that they will have to protect these two girls on their way to Dragontown. Moreover, they will observe the civilization and the state of those lands. Upon hearing that, the masked ones out of nowhere shout euphorically that those are very human acts, and such are their shouts that the twins nearly have their eardrums burst. But well, returning to the conversation, the masked ones, very happy, shout that they will complete the mission successfully. Takuto, seeing them very motivated, asks himself whether this is his opportunity to do something befitting a king. However, he does not think it over any longer, and, drawing near to them, he tells them that, although it is soon, he will give them a reward for protecting the girls and following his orders, namely, that he will give them names. Here one of the medics, upon hearing this, asks him whether he will grant them human names. Takuto confirms it to him and begins to give them names, which will be Ichiro, Jiro, and Seibo. That obviously delights the medics deeply, whereas Takuto, in his mind, thinks that in this world the units have personality, unlike in the game, and they are obsessed with humans, so it will be better to recognize their individuality. Nevertheless, at that very moment he sees how the medics, being so happy about their new names, begin to use any excuse to use them, leaving, with those antics, both Tu and Takuto speechless, where the latter asks himself whether by any chance things have gotten out of hand. At that point Maria also joins the medics, asking them not to forget about her, which leaves her sister speechless as well. Here our Albina kindly lets them know that if they have any problem they should tell her, whatever it may be, something that Korea appreciates, as she watches her sister playing with the medics. Changing the scene, we see a city in the desert, where we see the mayor grumbling about all the work she has to do, thinking that someday she could live free from those pedantic, conceited elves, and that she would fall in love with a handsome man, and they would form a happy family. But instead she finds herself asking how she is going to protect the city by working with the darkness, and besides, she has never heard of the kingdom of Mynoghra. At that moment a young lady arrives to speak with Mayor Antic. She aggressively answers her, "What do you want?" but immediately apologizes, asking now kindly how she can help her. The young lady mentions that a visitor has arrived who wishes to see her. Antic asks whether they made an appointment, and if they did not, they should leave. Her time is worth gold. But the young lady mentions that they are emissaries of Mynoghra. Faced with that, the mayor, startled, goes to receive them, introducing herself now kindly to our group. She asks herself, with an intrigued look, whether the bearers of the staff have joined forces with these people. Carrie and Maria introduce themselves as sisters, whereupon Antic realizes that they are dark elves, for she knows that they have been adopted as citizens, but she will be very careful with them, since she has heard tales of assassin dark elves, questioning now the reason why these girls are emissaries. Thus she remembers what Tonut Polly told her. Yes, the one we called Lady Cow, that there were some sisters whom the king was educating to turn them into leaders in the future. The mayor is astonished to understand that they are important people of that country, and she knows she must not put a foot wrong, or things will get very ugly. So Antic asks them what brings them here. Carrie tries to answer, but Jiro offers to speak on her behalf, telling Antic that they came for a visit at the invitation to play with Pepe, to study, and to learn more about this country's culture. One could say that this is the first step toward many futures. And since these young little sisters are still learning, they prefer to avoid official conversations. The mayor, now calmer, asks whether they did not come to negotiate agreements, to which Jiro says no, and asks that she see them as mere tourists. In this way Antic, pleased, invites them to give them a tour of the city's sights, while she thinks that she must get along with them, since it is crucial for future negotiations, and, in passing, to escape from the grind. Thus we see them visit different stalls in the city, seeing contrivances, food, and drinks. Elsewhere, Takuto observes that everything is going very well, and at that very moment Otto calls his attention for not being at work, whereupon our big man apologizes and continues with what he has to do. Now we see the mayor bidding farewell to the sisters, whereupon they mention to her that she is very nice, and already, in their room, they decide to review what they found out today. Korea asks Maria what she thought, proceeding to mention negative thoughts of hunger, fear, and despair. Jiro mentions that that is very concrete, but says that Maria is good at catching what people feel, since she can feel how they feel. The medics express their astonishment by striking poses and shouting, "What a great power!" Then Jiro takes out a bag that Maria had asked him to buy while they were walking through the city. Korea mentions that it is popple grass, a plant that causes euphoria and strong hallucinations. Its use, possession, and cultivation are prohibited throughout the world. Jiro, realizing that it is a narcotic, asks Maria to throw it away right now. Korea realizes that it is very well tended, so someone may be cultivating it. And Ichiro mentions that that is highly dangerous. And Saburo underscores that they will have to proceed with care, even if they are only doing tourism. Jiro grants that he is right, and that they must protect the young ladies. Then Ichiro, downcast, mentions that he would not like to get into any fight whatsoever. Maria asks them whether humans did not absolutely love getting into conflicts, at which, once again, the actors, astonished, strike poses before this truth. Switching panels, we see our group at a vein of dragon mine, and Ichiro mentions that although they covered it with earth, they did not manage to hide it altogether. Just then the sisters have a memory of their mother, who tells them that the world has wonderful places they still do not know. At that very moment a fellow appears. He comments that popple herb grows well in this place, apologizing in passing for having raised his voice all of a sudden. But now, addressing the emissaries of Mynoghra, he presents himself with the name of Besta Kirklium. He tells them that he runs a business in this city. The twins thank him for introducing himself. However, they ask him what he wants to talk about. The man mentions that, as a merchant, he has come to talk business, for, since he learned that they will control this area together with their nation, he proposes that they cultivate popple herbs with him. Korea asks him how that benefits Mynoghra and what they will tell their king Takatwara. The man answers that the popple herb sells for a high price, and they will receive a large share of its profits, adding that he is prepared to make them several more offers. Korea, in doubt, asks what offer he is referring to. However, Kirklium, with a mysterious smile, tells her that it would be better not to talk about that here, asking them to return to this place today after sunset, since thus they could talk better, handing them a parchment as a token of goodwill. And once the twins take it, Kirk mentions that he is glad to do business with people with an inclination toward evil, since they generally come to their senses more quickly, unlike the mayor, who is inflexible and makes everything complicated. Well then, after showing them a smile that reflects evil, the strange fellow leaves the place just like that. After this, they meet with Auntie Lise. Yes, the mayor, to whom the twins point out that she has treated them very kindly. Auntie Lise, very modest, answers them that she only wished to make a good impression. Maria mentions to her that they are not important, but even so she asks her to trust them with any problem whatsoever. In that case, the blonde asks them to speak well of her before the king of Mynoghra, something the girls very happily agree to. Nevertheless, out of nowhere Besta appears. The mayor asks him who allowed him to enter, to which that wretch and piece of trash answers that her staff allowed him, which is not true in the least, since that trash forced his way in. Besta, now addressing the twins, asks what they think of the offer he told them about, since, because they did not go to see him, he decided to come so they would answer him in person. Auntie Lise, upon hearing this, asks herself in her mind whether by any chance the girls made a deal with Besta behind her back, something that worries her very much, for if the darkness were to ally with such scum as Besta, this city would be finished. Nonetheless, Korea tells Besta to his face that it is impossible for them to work with someone like him, and she had hoped that the hard-headed man would understand that if they did not appear at the place where he had summoned them. Kia, addressing Auntie Lise, asks whether anything would happen if they take care of those men, since if they do not behave and cause a conflict, she would not be able to look her king in the face. Auntie Lise calms her, thus granting permission for them to take care of them however they wish, exclaiming that those men have been ruining her city. Here the medics were already preparing to attack. Just then Besta draws a syringe with a mysterious substance, something that Korea deduces is a concentrate of popple herb extract, and surely that injection hooks anyone for life. Thus she asks him whether he is aware of what he is doing, for laying a hand on them means making an enemy of Mynoghra. Takatwara entrusted them with this mission, and he is an incredible monarch. Besta, with utter self-confidence, tells them that after the injection she will follow his orders without a peep, being sure that the perverted Lolikan Takuto will not open his mouth and will do as he says. Then, with nothing more to say, he orders his lackeys to finish them off, but in less than a second they are defeated by the medics. Before we see what happened, we return to Takuto and Atu. While they are doing their work in the village, Emil arrives to ask them the reason for sending their medics instead of guards. Otto answers that those love humans and nearby demi-humans, so thanks to that they are units with very peculiar abilities, since their specialties are both healing and killing humans, for in reality their kind is called brain-eaters. Returning to the fight, it turns out they not only defeated the lackeys, but killed them in such a brutal way that they tore off their skin to put it on themselves, now revealing the physique that had been hidden under those masks. They shout that they are closer to being human. The mayor, horrified, sees how Korea, with a look of hate, shouts at Besta that she will show no mercy whatsoever to anyone who harms her sister, and she would never show mercy to anyone who insults her king Takatwara. Then, in the next instant, letting the brain eaters massacre Besta completely. Once everything is ended, we see how the room is filled with bloodstains and the poor mayor on the floor, unable to move from fear. Although, for her, what frightens her most is that the girls did not even flinch upon seeing that carnage. The mayor cannot take it any longer and ends up wetting herself. The medics, seeing this, think that they ought to show a little human empathy. Therefore, they mention the idea of wetting themselves so that the mayor will not be the only one to suffer embarrassment. Evidently, Korea does not intend to allow such foolishness, so with a good hard kick, she makes them reflect. Seeing this, the mayor calms down a little, and now, with a smile, she mentions that this is madness. Now, with a change of scene, we see our protagonist being scolded by Aoyu. She asks him the reason for having given the twins so very much freedom, throwing it in his face that he did not work and was watching them with his shared perception, and he even had time to warn them by telepathy. Takuto excuses himself, saying that he did not want to be strict with them, since that way they would hate him, and moreover they are at a very impressionable age. However, this only makes Otto all the more furious, asking him whether by any chance he is the father of those girls to be speaking that way. Now too, addressing the twins, asks whether they intended to hide it together with the king, something they both confirm while concealing the blood-soaked sheets, something that Otto notices all the same, and she shouts at them that it is far too late. Then she shifts her focus of attention. Now, looking at the brain eaters, she mentions that she learned they flayed a person in front of the mayor, something that the fellows, instead of denying, very proudly shout, saying that they are now one step closer to being human, for they obtained a very human skin. The elf, acting like a grumpy mother, orders them to be quiet. Then, with all of them kneeling before her, shouts that none of them will move from here until they write a reflection, something to which even the very king commits himself. Yes, thoroughly henpecked. Otto, with a slam on the table, opens the meeting, while Takuto is feeding sweets to the sisters. Here Otto calls them to attention so that they will reflect on what they did. Jia tries to calm her down. Emil tells her that she understands how she feels, but they should continue with the meeting. Mulder also mentions that this is the fault of not having taught the twins properly. Thus AO calms down to continue with the Dragontown matter. Mulder shows the report and asks the sisters whether they are sure of their investigation, to which Carrie confirms it, assuring that the king has already reviewed it. Here Mulder gives his opinion, mentioning that the city is a bit unstable. Lou also reads the report and adds that their resources are scarce, and thus crimes are frequent. To this Atao adds that some foreign barbarians are attacking them. Moreover, they are facing goblins, orcs, and at times hill giants. Ja comments that the first two are not a problem, but it is inevitable to lose people against the hill giants. Mulder mentions that a group appears suddenly near the city and that their number increases constantly every day. Otto asks how they appear suddenly. Mulder supposes that it may be because they cannot detect enemies, and, even though their senses are sharper, which ought to allow them to detect the presence of enemies, it would seem they are exhausted. And he comments that if things go on like this, Dragontown will fall sooner or later, and they ought to send their forces as soon as possible. M thinks it a good idea, but proposes dividing their forces, since otherwise it would mean a cost to construction and agriculture. Meanwhile, Ja thinks of other solutions. Otto mentions that she will join the operation, and she says this so that they will take it into account. Here Mulder makes an observation regarding her power to steal abilities. Otto mentions that, even if they are weaklings, she will be able to steal useful abilities from them. Takuto grants that she is right, since thus she will be able to increase her power. Moreover, he had already planned to send her. Mulder, taking up the idea, mentions that in that case he will look for those who will accompany her, but Otto tells him that it would be better for them to handle negotiation and coordination, since he believes they will need more men. Mulder decides well upon his apprentices. Although they only do routine tasks, they could kill goblins with their magic. Otto agrees with that. Ja offers his forces to defend the nation, but here Otto mentions that something worries her, and it is that up to now their defense has rested entirely on it too. Ja, almost frustrated, cannot deny it. Then she gives the floor to Takuto, who mentions that the Harrow and Isla will be the base of their defense, which surprises everyone. Mulder rises, appreciating his king's vision. In Lu they also rise, pleased at how he seems to be able to see the future and prepare for everything. Takuto reveals to us in his mind that it came just in time, but it was nothing but pure coincidence, for at times he has to pretend to have all this power. Just then Korea praises him, saying that she expected nothing less from him, and Maria gives him some claps. Otto asks them whether they wish to specify anything further. In her mind, she tells herself that she did well to include the Dark Elves in the meetings, since as long as you manage a true civilization, their contributions will be vital. Here Takuto stands and tells them that everything is perfect and that they should keep it up. On hearing him, everyone is glad to be praised by their king, and the sisters dedicate some cheers to him. Here Takuto reveals to us in his mind that by saying something at the end he improved their motivation, and that, unlike in the game, the leader has to draw out their potential, which is a difficult but gratifying task. Outside already, we see how Tu is excited about the birth of the new heroine. Just then Korea asks what that heroine he will summon is like. Takuto answers that it is a surprise. At the same time he asks Tu what she thinks will happen with Isla. She answers him that she is the first heroine they have summoned since they arrived, so she does not know what will happen. However, in case she wants to rebel, she will give her life to protect him. Nevertheless, while Takuto performs the summoning, he lets Tu know that he has come this far thanks to her company, but if he loses her he will not be able to summon again. Thus he asks her, please, not to sacrifice herself. With that said, Takuto finishes the summoning, creating a cocoon. When it breaks, a mantis emerges, who, with a cry, throws the entire village into commotion. The mantis, bowing before King Takuto, tells him that it is an honor to be able to see him in this place. She presents herself with the name of Isla, the Queen of Insects, underscoring that her body trembles with joy at knowing that she will serve him once again. Takuto, thrilled, asks her whether she knows who he is. The mantis, after looking at him carefully, cries out that of course she remembers, recognizing him as Lord Takatwara. Just then Tu, placing herself in front of her king, asks Isla whether she solemnly swears to serve her king. Something the mantis does not answer, for she is overcome with emotion at seeing her little Tu, and she strokes her head, underscoring how adorable she is. Now Tu, with an embarrassed and adorable voice, asks her to answer. Isla replies that of course she swears it, adding that her body remembers the days she spent with the king. Takuto, after hearing all this, shows a great smile. Seeing that she truly remembers, Isla confirms it to him, since, after all, he was the only one who drew out all her power, also adding that her little Tu was always her favorite. Embarrassed, Tu understands this, asking her to stop stroking her head, but, well, leaving that aside, Isla asks her king whether he would be so kind as to explain to her the present situation. Later, in the palace, Takuto tells her the whole situation, underscoring that there is much he does not know, but he has come this far thanks to Tu. This makes the albino blush, and she comments that it is not that big a deal, for she was able to do it. She adds that if she had been alone, they would have already committed suicide. For some reason that seems beautiful to Takuto. And thus the two lovebirds begin to gaze deeply into one another, right in front of Isla, who mentions that she should not be seeing this. But returning to the main subject, she understands the strategy, which is to protect the peaceful nation in these unknown lands, something that Takuto confirms, mentioning that she is the heroine of defense. Upon hearing this, Isla deduces that the heroine of attack will be the one to destroy the barbarians in Dragon Town. But after this, Tu begins to cry, for although she knows that sending her is the most appropriate thing, she underscores that she is going to miss Takuto very much. Our protagonist lets her know that he will miss her, too, but he knows that she is the only one who can do it. And now, with the face of a gallant, he reveals that he is worried about her, since without her he does not know whether he will be able to talk with the Dark Elves. At that, Tu feels the same sadness at having to part, so, without hesitation, she hugs her king tightly. Isla, being somewhat ignored, mentions for the second time that she should not be seeing this. Switching panels, we see Tu taking her leave of Takuto, promising him that she will return. For his part, our Takuto lets her know that he will be waiting for her. Once she is gone, Isla mentions that it is about time to get to work, and, bowing to him, tells him that she will take care of all the details. The next morning we see Takuto, who is quite tired, something Isla notices, and she underscores that she cannot believe that he is still not awake, asking moreover how he has managed until now. Just then Maria appears, who tells her that the king always sleeps until noon. Carrie adds that on the days when he does not wake up at noon, she or Maria come to wake him. On hearing that, Isla mentions that that cannot be allowed, asking her lord what people will think of him if he sleeps until late and women come to wake him. Therefore, she kindly asks him that, from now on, he should wake up by himself in the morning. Takuto, without much enthusiasm, comments that he will try. Seeing this, Korea underscores that she is very different from Tu, since Tu lets the king do whatever he wants, something that Isla had already imagined. But well, leaving that aside, she asks to take the twins to give her a tour, and Takuto thinks it would be a good idea, since in that way she would learn the current defenses of the area, so he allows her to take the twins. But before leaving, Isla mentions to her master that soon her advisors will come to ask for his approval. Therefore, she recommends that he be responsible. After the girls and Isla have gone, Emil arrives, asking her king to take a look and approve the new division of tasks, something that makes Takuto nervous, for it is the first time they will be alone with someone who is not Aoyu. Seeing him so pensive, she, nervous, asks him whether there is any problem with her proposal. Takuto, even more nervous, tells her that everything is very well done, but he adds that starting next week they will have to reduce the gathering personnel and rotate them to other tasks, something that M gladly accepts. Once she goes, Takuto feels a great relief, underscoring that in a one-to-one conversation there is no escape. Although, to his bad luck, Ja arrives on the spot, asking him to approve the warriors' training. After this, we see how the sisters walk with Isla. She asks them to tell her about the facilities. Korea points out the government office. That is where they send documentation and make reports. Isla likes that they are so orderly, but just then M comes running with some papers, approaching the sisters. Isla mentions to her that she looks very busy and asks whether she is all right. Emil, somewhat flustered, tells her that Ja broke the training equipment again. He is breaking so many things that she is considering taking away his budget, and out of nowhere she starts to cry, since now that Molter is away she has more tasks to do, cursing the extra work she has now. Faced with this, Isla hugs her, strokes her, but asks her not to use swear words. Emil relaxes, feeling the warmth of her body. Isla tells her that later she will scold the chief of the warriors. M thanks her and asks whether later she could advise her on the next building, something the heroine of defense gladly agrees to help with. Now we see the rest of the warriors and the sisters training with swords, but the brute Ja rushes at them, saying that they are slacking off. In a single motion, he cuts everyone's blades, asking them firmly whether by any chance they think they will protect their king with such a low level, and now he intends to train them from the beginning. Just then a giant shadow covers Jia's body, and when he raises his gaze he sees Isla. She asks him that before continuing they ought to take care of the equipment they have. Ja apologizes and, trying to excuse himself, mentions that he gets very excited when training. Faced with this, Isla strokes his head and tells him the following. Forgetting who you are shows that you are still a child, and if you want to protect the king you should act with serenity. Jia, embarrassed, asks her to stop stroking him, since it is affecting his authority. Although just then they hear a noise similar to a drum, Isla asks what it is. The sisters, running, inform her that it is mealtime. Now we see everyone sharing the food. Isla asks them to distribute the provisions well. Korea mentions that in that way nothing is wasted. Some elves call to her, saying that if she intends to eat, she can use the table they prepared for her. Isla, although she is pleased, mentions to them that she prefers to eat with them. The elves, for a moment, refuse, since it would be disrespectful, but Isla tells them that she is the heroine of defense, which implies being near at hand to protect them. And to fulfill her mission, she must share in the people's vision and feelings. While she is eating, she asks herself where those adorable twins have gone. Appearing at her side, they present her with some plates on which they traced her face, so that she might eat. Faced with this lovely gesture, the heroine of defense hugs them, stroking their heads, too, and she mentions to everyone that she will remember this moment forever. After a while, and night falls, Isla is standing guard while she thinks up ideas to defend against intruders. Just then she hears that in one of the rooms someone is crying. She approaches and sees that it is the sisters. She asks them why they are awake at these hours. Maria tells her that Korea cannot sleep, and she woke up to keep her company. Thus Isla asks her to tell her the reason why she cannot sleep. Korea tells her that she dreamed of her mother. Seeing her was so comforting that upon waking she felt very bad that it was only a dream, But she also tells her not to worry, since these dreams are becoming less frequent, and she will go back to sleep. Then Isla proposes to sleep with them from now on. In this way, they will always have her beside them. And, feeling safe in her arms, the sisters fall asleep little by little. The next day, we see Isla speaking with Takuto, for she tells him that after talking with Emil, the most advisable building for next is the Institute of Instruction. That suits Takuto fine, and after that they will create the workshops. But Isla also mentions that the forest gives the dark elves an advantage, and the cursed terrain grants benefits to evil beings. Moreover, with herself present, they will be safe for quite some time. Takuto mentions that there is no hurry to strengthen the defenses, since right now they are not at war. Just then, Isla mentions something that Korea told her, namely that the little one wants to be of use to the king. Likewise, she asks how little two is, whereupon Takuto answers that she is in a very amusing situation. He shows us his shared perception with her, where we see some giants come up to the fortress and two ready to fight. Now, with a single strike, she finishes off all the giants in one movement. She mentions that it was a good hunt and reports that she is done. Behind her stands the mayor, who, utterly frightened, thanks her for her help. Then two asks whether she would not like to rest a little. And so the mayor withdraws, while little two gazes at the sky and remembers Takuto. Afterwards, she is in the shade, chatting calmly with Molter. The old man laughs, saying that in the end they did manage to integrate with the people of the city, for he thought they would be afraid of two. However, it was not so, thanks to Pepe. Otto admits that he is right, but she is still furious because he compared her to an octopus and walked away. Changing the subject, Mulder asks how things are going with respect to obtaining the barbarian's abilities. Otto answers that everything is going perfectly, for although they are weak, they have better abilities than they deserve. Mulder only laughs and mentions that surely King Takuto will be delighted to hear that. While they are talking, they detect something. In the distance, a hill giant draws near. This intrigues too, and she asks herself the reason why they appear so suddenly. At that moment, the mayor arrives, agitated, to inform them that the hill giant is approaching and that their archers are already preparing. Otto calms her and asserts that she can take care of it completely alone. At great speed, she runs toward the giant. This worries the mayor, but Molter suggests that she not worry, since two is facing something very weak. He explains that Miss Two is a heroine, so it will be no problem for her, but since he does not want to be left doing nothing either, he will help a little, grasping his staff, Ruins Land, and he casts it at the giant. This spell increases the strength of evil beings and reduces the strength of the other units that are within its range. With that, Two is enhanced and launches the attack. With a leap, she splits the giant in two, but suddenly she hears gold coins falling to the ground. At once she communicates with Takuto and tells him what happened. Our protagonist, a little confused, decides to use shared perception. Looking through Otto's eyes, he recognizes the emblem on that coin as being from another game called Break Questus. As they talk about this quite disconcerting event, Otto and Molter hear a great army approaching in the distance. Here Takuto understands something, namely that the enemy they face is an RPG, the army of the Demon King. With a change of scene, the saint and her guards scour a city in ruins in search of survivors after the attack of a witch. Suddenly, all her soldiers are slain in a single strike. At the same time, a little lowly approaches, singing and greeting the saint. This little one is Arikino, the slug witch. The saint asks her how she can still be alive if they have already executed her 17 times. Faced with this, Arikino only laughs and mentions that she herself wonders the very same thing. The saint asks whether by any chance that power has something to do with her resurrections, but the lowly grows bored of listening, and, raising her hands, makes all the dead citizens and soldiers rise and begin to surround the saint. The blonde will not permit it, and, conjuring the flowers of death spell, she raises a barrier of fire around herself that incinerates the living dead in a trice. The lowly is frightened, and, seeing how the saint heads for her at great speed, she begins to scream, only to be run through by the saint's staff. The saint recognizes that she is someone strong, and that game is impossible to win. After this, Arikino falls to the ground, lifeless. Drawing her staff from the lowly's body, the saint mentions that it is her death number 18. She raises her gaze to the sky and asks her god what is happening in this world. In another panel, we see the Demon King's army drawing near. Otto is receiving instructions from Takuto, who tells her that they are friends from the traditional JRPG Break Questus. Does it have a hero as part of his journey to defeat the Demon King? Here AO deduces the reason why they appear, and it is that in Break Questus they do not warn you about enemy encounters, and that is what is happening. Islam mentions that she did not expect them to come from another game genre, but since Takuto played the game, he knows how to defeat them, so he gives 2 information. On the other hand, from his throne the Demon King gives the order to conquer. Outside, Ice Rock asks Flaming whether the king has already given any order. Flamin confirms it to him and mentions that they can handle as many monsters as they wish. Ice Rock mentions that they must reward the great faith that they place in them. All the orcs and goblins of the world have joined the Demon King's forces upon appearing here. Flaming laughs, mentioning that their king's majesty does not diminish at all, even though they are in another world. Ice Rock mentions that he expected nothing less from his great lord, and that is why he is the right one to conquer this world. Flaming mentions to him that it will sound a little foolish, but he asks him what will become of their objectives in their previous world. Ice Rock answers that it is of no importance, since the priority is to fulfill the Demon King's orders. Ice Rock understands him, so he initiates the conquest. Raising his voice, he mentions that they will lay waste to the city and offer the greatest despair. All the monsters charge forward, and he asks Flaming what he will do, mentioning that he will pass on this, and that Ice Rock may keep the honor of leading them. Thanking him, Ice Rock leaps to the battlefield, while Flaming mentions that he will fulfill his own objectives. Now the whole army is running toward Dragon Town, but at that moment a dark dome surrounds them, stopping the monsters. Ice Rock asks the warlock of his army what is happening. The warlock replies that it is an enemy spell, something that Ice Rock cannot believe, for he has never seen a spell on such a scale. The warlock mentions that he cannot believe it either. All the orcs and goblins seem to be suffocating. Ice Rock asks himself why they are suffering while the strength of demons like himself only increases. He questions whether this spell is being cast by someone evil. The warlock tells his lord that a hero might be casting the spell, but Ice Rock tells him to hold his tongue. Just then a voice draws his attention, mentioning that if they spoke of a hero, it is true that they come from an RPG. Piercing the warlock from beneath the ground, Ice Rock looks forward, asking who she is. Yes, it is Atu, who recognizes Ice Rock as an ice warrior, one of the 4 generals. He asks her how she knows his name, and, pointing his weapon, orders her to answer who she is. Faced with this, Atu answers that she comes from Eternal Nations, a 4X strategy game. She serves Takatwara, her magnanimous king, and she is Sadu of the Mire, and she will be the one who is going to annihilate them. At the gates of Dragon Town, the archers are defending. Antic orders more arrows brought, and that the citizens be led to the northeast. They will leave the city when they secure an escape route. Behind her appears Molder, laughing, mentioning that it will not be necessary. Antic tells him that their army is enormous. Their spells only slowed it for a short time, and their forces will not be able to repel them. But at that moment a crash is heard. Dozens of enemies go flying. Molter mentions that it must be the work of Miss 2, commenting that that woman is the heroine and the pride of Mynoghra. With her on their battlefield, it is impossible for them to lose, and it is certain that she will come back with the enemy general's head, for without their general an army is nothing. Antic shows herself somewhat frightened, seeing the way 2 faces the monsters, and she says to herself that this is Mynoghra. For his part, Ice Rock strikes the ground, launching a great quantity of ice projectiles. Otto runs while she dodges, managing to come near to strike, but he dodges it by a very little. Otto smiles, makes a spin in the air, and cuts down the surrounding enemies. Rock is left stunned at her movements, while he mentions that it is just as her king said, remembering that she must consider her attack range. In an RPG, the battles are like a small party, but in her game she fights with larger armies, so a unit strikes the entire army, and they must take advantage of this edge, no matter how large the army is. Ice asks her why she does not serve as king to expand their realms, for she, too, is evil. Otto answers him, "What do you want that for? Coming from a normal country has a lot of paperwork." She asks, sarcastically, whether they must absolutely love bureaucracy if they want the whole world. Seeing that he understands nothing of what she is saying, she reminds him that his character does not have a very developed story, mocking him for not remembering that he is a mid-boss whom everyone defeated. At that moment, all the times he died come to Ice Rock's mind, and he attacks Otto to make her shut up. Seeing that he remembers the same as they do, she asks him what it feels like to exist with the sole purpose of being killed. Ice Rock, fed up with it too, reminds her who he is and the magnificence of his king. Faced with this, Ayu tells him to unleash his strongest strike, with confidence that he will win. Ice Rock prepares glacial decapitation and, freezing 2's feet, slices her shoulder. Obviously, that is not enough, and with a murderous glare 2 runs him through, winning, although a little humiliated for being the heroine of King Takuto, and then proceeds to heal herself. Right then 2 grouses about that finishing strike. Suddenly, she gets the notice that she has obtained Ice Rock's ability, Glacial Decapitation, a powerful strike that guarantees a hit and prevents the enemy from moving for a while. Seeing what it is, she calms down, and, understanding that they are facing rivals from other game genres with different mechanics, she assumes they will be quite a problem. That said, she sets out to report it to Takuto, but in doing so she notices something, namely that there are enemies in Mynoghra. Now we cut to the Demon King. He is pronouncing some words we cannot hear. From a castle, he surveys the lands he will conquer, remarking how beautiful and fair they are. Back in Mynoghra, one of the elves, flustered, informs his king that there are enemies in the cursed lands, which Takuto already knows. In that case, the elf apologizes to him, since he thought he should report the situation anyway. Isla reassures him, telling him that the king possesses the power to know what is happening within his domains, adding that their forces, Ja included, have already moved out, while they themselves will go to the residential zone. The elf understands and withdraws at once. The twins, a little worried, ask Takuto whether they are in trouble. Takuto reassures them, but admits it is a somewhat unpleasant situation, something with which Isla agrees, for she never thought they would come to attack them, underscoring that it is possible that the enemy leader, the Demon King, is a player like Takuto. The latter, perfectly calm, lets her know that he does not care about that at all. Whether he is a player or not is irrelevant, adding that at this point it will be difficult to maintain peace, since, let us remember, 2 took down one of his 4 generals. With all this, Isla recalls how her king told her to crush them with all her strength. After that, the mantis bows and accepts her highness's orders. Leaving that aside, Takuto, with a smile, mentions that they will launch their counterattack. Outside, he tells Isla that, among their forces, first place belongs to her. Next come the Dark Elf warriors led by Jia. Here Isla adds the Brain Eaters, who, although there are only 3 of them, possess healing abilities. Lastly, Takuto mentions the larvae, who, thanks to Isla's presence, will complement their abilities. Although, as he walks, he mentions that perhaps he should have foreseen this and spawned combat larvae. But since it makes no sense to think about that now, both Korea and Maria remind him that the people are grateful to the larvae. Isla hears this and, by way of thanks, gives them a hug. At that instant, Takuto receives a call from Emil, who tells him they have finished evacuating the people who will not be fighting. Takuto congratulates her and says they are on their way. Then Ja also calls, informing him that he has an approximate estimate of the enemies attacking them. Our protagonist is pleased, since M and Ja acted without his giving any order whatsoever. Clearly that would not have happened in the game, and he understands that he has people he can trust. Takuto asks for the enemy count, and Ja answers that it is roughly 1,000 enemies. Besides goblins and orcs, he also saw unknown and grotesque beings. Takuto praises him and orders him to continue defending the outskirts of the capital, and that he himself will take care of the enemy. After hanging up, Takuto shows that he is disconcerted by the large number of foes, assuming that they will come with one of the 4 generals, fearing that this battle will be very hard, but he smiles as something occurs to him. Isla, seeing his expression, asks what strategy he has in mind. Takuto answers that they gathered their mana resources precisely for this occasion. Since they are facing an RPG, it is time to show them the strengths of a 4x strategy game. Isla asks whether he will produce units with emergency creation, since with that he will easily overturn the numerical difference. She adds that producing as many units as they want, so long as they have mana, is a great advantage in their game. Here Takuto cuts her off and, shedding a chilling aura, grants Isla all of Mynoghra's mana reserves. Isla is taken aback. 2 also receives all the reserves. Takuto plans to raise her level to the maximum in order to obtain these 2 abilities, predation and parasitic eggs. And when she has them, he will use that power to crush all their enemies. After giving her all the reserves, Isla laughs, saying she is glad that he is so miserly by handing everything over to her in this crisis. Takuto mentions that ever since what happened in Dragon Town, he already knows what the enemy is like. Even if they have one of their generals, Isla should, right now, be able to deal with them. Isla recalls when Takuto asked her to show him why she is a defensive heroine, and, in the present, the Queen of Insects promises not to let him down, for she will defeat all their enemies. When they reach M and the people, Isla spreads her wings to head to battle. Takuto reminds her to be careful with the RPG mechanics. That reminds Isla that they caught two off guard, so she says that she will be very careful. The twins watch her, worried, but Isla tells them that she promised to come back home. Then Korea tells her that they will look after the king while they wait for her. After thanking them and looking over all the people, she proceeds to fly to the battlefield. Elsewhere in the forest, we see a group of monsters. The one in red armor asks why they separated from Ice Rock to come on their own, to which the red demon mentions that it is possible the Demon King did not authorize that operation. The one in armor does not understand and adds that perhaps the boss intends to betray the king. The one in armor asks why he would do this. The red demon asks whether he remembers the moment they arrived in this world, for they all appeared in the same place, or at least it looked that way, though apparently the same did not happen with the boss and the Demon King. Just then they hear a sound in the bushes. Seeing the figure, they ask whether it is a lookout, but they notice something strange. This monster has one eye jutting out and many bubbles on its body. They ask what happened to it, but when it tries to answer, several small creatures shoot out of its body. The demons try to protect themselves, but, seeing so many, order a retreat. Then a voice addresses them, saying that they are pitiful, mocking that the Demon King's forces should retreat over something like that. From a tree Isla appears, telling them that, as forces of darkness, they ought to be more beautiful, more ruthless, and more exacting. In an instant she finishes them off, gaining 30 points of nutrition, and, as she turns, we see Flaming, who tells her to identify herself. Isla answers that she serves the kingdom of Mynoghra, ruled by the king of Ruin, Takatwara, and that she is the queen of insects. Flaming also introduces himself as the fire demon and one of the 4 generals. Isla mentions that she knew a leader would come, just like Ice Rock. Flaming mocks Ice Rock's death, whereupon Isla asks whether by any chance he was not his comrade. He answers that Ice Rock was always the weakest, and that she should not think he will be eliminated as easily as Ice Rock. Isla tells him he is very full of himself, to which he answers that it will be child's play to murder her and take the throne from that Takuto fellow. That breaks the queen's patience, and she tells him he barks too much for being such trash. Flaming raises his flames, swathing his body in them, and the two hurl themselves into battle. Meanwhile, Takuto is focused on overseeing how the operation is going, knowing that Isla is fighting Flaming, the demon from the game. He tells us that when a character from an RPG faces one from a 4X game, the one from the 4X game turns out to be much stronger in combat, something they already confirmed in the battle in Dragon Town. He also tells us that the larvae not fighting Flaming are patrolling the cursed lands and eliminating invaders, while Jia and the warriors are defending the capital's perimeter. Emil is with the evacuated Dark Elves, and the Brain Eaters are ready to jump into action if needed. So, with all that, he underscores that everything is going according to plan, at least in theory. Just then Maria and Korea see their king a bit pensive, which he admits, since there is something that worries him, asking them whether there is anything that catches their attention, which the twins deny with a shake of the head. Back with Isla, Flaming shouts that he did not know that monsters like her existed in this world, and then he hurls a lance of fire at her. Isla blocks it and lets him know that calling her a monster is disrespectful. She goes back on the attack against Flaming, telling him that he should not say that to a lady. Right then Isla's larvae drop down on the fire demon. Though they manage to seize him, he raises his body temperature and calcines them in an instant, telling Isla now that it would not be fair if only she had pawns, and he proceeds to summon his own. Our mantis notes how he summons them at no cost whatsoever in the middle of combat, and she presses him with a question that would interest her master, namely, the reason for attacking them, while she uses her larvae to finish off his pawns at once. After another exchange of strikes, Flaming perches atop a tree, so Isla seizes the moment and underscores that splitting his forces away from Dragon Town in order to attack them is no sensible plan. Flaming finally decides to answer her question, though not without sowing doubts about her king, asking her whether by any chance her king did not tell her. Isla, regardless, comments that whatever he says will not affect her loyalty to her king. Flaming knows this, but in passing asks her what she thinks of herself. The mantis does not understand what he means, so he asks whether she harbors doubts about her own being. That enrages Flaming, who, attacking, demands that she answer. Isla blocks him. She answers that she is Mynoghra's heroine and the loyal servant of her king Takatwara. That is what she is, nothing more and nothing less. Flaming grows angry upon hearing that, throwing in her face that she is only a servant, yet she looks brimming with pride and conviction. However, at that instant, he understands why he is so upset. He envies that she is so free, serving her king and deciding to be loyal of her own will. Asking now how that feels, Isla answers that it feels blissful, that there is nothing that makes her happier than that, than helping her master. So, once that is answered, she asks Flaming what about him, calling him a puppet forced to dance as a general because it was imposed on him. Upon hearing this, Flaming, furious, increases his heat and shouts that after killing her he will kill everyone, and at last he will obtain his freedom. Thus he creates a tornado of fire that chases Isla. And though it seems that it has already caught her, in the end it turns out she covered herself in a cocoon. Asking now whether that is all his yearning for freedom can do, Flaming rushes forward in a rage with lances of fire, attacks that are not at all difficult for Isla to dodge. She even underscores that he will need that multiplied by 5 just to do anything to her whatsoever. Right then Flaming runs out of magic. Our mantis capitalizes on it, cutting straight across his abdomen, and, before finishing him off, she tells him that her master sends him one last message, namely that they underestimated him. Flaming, before dying, has a memory in which he is asked whether it is true that they will obtain peace and freedom if they sacrifice this world. After that he realizes he was always a puppet, something that no longer matters to him now, for at least he will play his role to the end. At once he is split in two by Isla. Takuto notices it and congratulates her, underscoring that she was fantastic. The Queen of Insects thanks him, telling him that she has leveled up again thanks to this battle and is thinking of acquiring another skill. However, out of nowhere, the communication is cut. Our mantis does not understand, but everything gets worse when she sees Korea and Maria behind her. They do not know why they are in this place either. Fearing what may happen, Isla decides to protect them with her larvae, without noticing Flaming's pitiless smile, while Isla tries to keep contacting Takuto, but, receiving no response, she flees together with the girls, yet she realizes they have returned to the very same spot. Flaming begins to laugh, while Isla strikes him, saying that it is impossible. He answers that you cannot kill someone who is already dead. For his part, Takuto observes how the auto-defense has activated, and, recalling the events in which Flaming appears, he knows that, after being defeated, Flaming keeps on talking. Isla reassures the girls, promising that she will not let them be harmed, and she keeps trying to strike Flaming, but a red aura stops her. Flaming mentions that he has already gone through that a great many times, and that it is always the same. Isla sees the girls step in front of her and begs them to stop, but the sisters say that their legs are moving on their own. Isla tries to stop them, but cannot reach them, thus recalling the RPG mechanics that her master told her about. Flaming, being a first-class villain, tells her that now she will see these girls' deaths in first person. The sisters plead with Isla for help, while she keeps struggling to move, but Flaming underscores to them that it is useless, naming the mechanic a scripted event. The sisters say they do not want to die, whereupon Isla clenches her fist to inflict wounds all over her own body. Flaming calls them idiots for believing they are acting of their own will, since neither the heroes nor the Demon King are aware of how easy it is to get rid of themselves. Here Flaming shouts to the sky, telling whoever will listen that he deceived them all, promising that they would be free, and that he never had that intention. He mentions the same goes for Takuto, whom he recognizes as a player, since he knows that Takuto will surely think better of his team as soon as Flaming defeats him. But Flaming is still here, and, as revenge, he will kill his favorite characters. Isla begs him to stop, but Flaming underscores that he will not, declaring that he hates them all, and, emanating a glow, he triggers a gigantic explosion. At this point we are shown a memory of Korea and Maria. On a certain night, they climb a tree. Korea, seeing the view they have, underscores to her sister that she has found a wonderful place, for from here, they can see their king's nation. There Maria tells her that the king said that his nation belonged to everyone. So, very excited, she shouts that the country belongs to everyone. On hearing that, Korea gets excited, too. At the moment the sky clears, they manage to see how the moonlight illuminates Mynoghra. Seeing this, Maria points out to her sister that the moon is beautiful, adding that the king told her that when one says the moon is beautiful, it means an I love you. At these words the sisters are astonished at how very much their king Takatwara can know. As they speak of this, they take each other by the hand and decide that next time they will bring Mama Isla to this place, but they will do it when there is another full moon. So for now they promise to keep it a secret. Returning to the present, we see how the twins are unhurt because Isla used her body to protect them, now left without an arm and very badly wounded. Here Mama Isla, far too exhausted, asks them whether they are all right. Maria and Korea hug their mother and worry, desperately wanting to take her to Takuto. However, though they try to communicate with him, the system again informs them that there is a communication error. Our mantis reassures her daughters, telling them that they do not need to heal her, for what is important is that they pay attention to what she is going to tell them now, warning them as well that she surely will not make it out of here alive. At this, the girls, in tears, cry out that there must be some other way to save her, while also blaming themselves for what is happening, for they think that if they were stronger, they wouldn't have to be going through this, shouting that they only wanted to live with their Mama Isla. Now, looking up at the sky, they ask whether they did something so bad as to deserve this. Isla answers them that they have done nothing bad, for it was simply she who was far too weak. So great is the twins' pain that they beg Isla to die with them, since life has nothing good in it. That is, of course, something Isla will not allow. She takes her heart out of her chest, yes, literally, and apologizes to them for dying before their very eyes. She asks them to eat it and to go on living. In that moment, the heart begins to shine. Isla explains that she will transfer to them all her power, hoping that her daughters will live as they please, and after that she falls to the ground, saying that she loves them. We change scenes. We see how Tu eliminates more giants and tells Molter that it was not necessary for him to come. The old man underscores that the king ordered him to accompany her to destroy the Demon King's fortress. Just then they see more enemies arriving, and Atu is in a hurry to get to Tuto, so she eliminates them at once. But then a crash is heard. Looking up at the sky, she understands what happened and falls to the ground. Molter orders everyone to duck. Tu gets up, exclaiming that Isla was one of Mynoghra's heroines, pounding the ground in fury. Molter asks her to calm down. After a moment, she clarifies that she lost her composure. They ask her what happened, so a sorrowful Tu only speaks the name Isla. Now we see how Takuto does not understand what happened, since Flaming's event should have occurred in that world. Meanwhile, the communication does not return, and he collapses to the ground, receiving the message of Isla's death and Flaming's defeat. Here we are shown how, in the original game, the hero received the power of the person who faced Flaming and thus became stronger. So now we follow the sisters. Each one is eating Isla's heart through tears, and the system announces that the hero has awakened a new power. Although, of course, all this appears with an error. But then that enhancement is interrupted, recognizing something strange in the hero and canceling the process. But something intervenes in this, activating the passing of the crown, recognizing these two duplicated targets, and it ends with the awakening of both. Thus we see the two sisters taking each other by the hand, and each with one eye of red color, now advancing in the direction of the moon, while Takuto contacts Atu, telling her that Isla was destroyed by becoming involved in a death event. Aou is angry, for she remembers Ice Rock's attack and informs him that he did not report that crucial detail. So she decides to return to the capital at once, but Takuto stops her, clarifying that Isla's death is a misfortune. However, the twins survived and are heading to the enemy fortress in search of revenge, since Isla bequeathed to them her heroine status. Aou is surprised by this, but they cannot allow themselves to keep losing more heroes. Takuto knows that, since his orders do not reach the twins, he must ask Tu to go after them. However, Tu asks permission to refuse, since RPG mechanics are a threat, begging him to think it over and let her protect him. Even so, Takuto refuses, since he can only ask it of her. Finally, Aou accepts and orders Molter to return to the capital, remembering that their king Takuto was the best player of Eternal Nations, and they must only trust him and obey. Now, for Jia's part, he communicates with Takuto, informing him that soon they will finish off all those who invaded their lands, asking now whether he should pursue the rest. Emil also informs them that the non-combatants will continue evacuating until morning, and afterward they will begin on the damaged facilities. Takuto answers, asking that they do nothing on their own, since he will send them whatever is necessary in due time. At this, Jia and M apologize to their lord, and in the call, although outside, Jia asks himself what is happening to their king. In a change of scene, we see Korea approaching a woman who calls herself Lady Wing, the Tempest General of the Demon King's army. Drawing near, Lady Wing underscores that Korea is very brave to come toward her completely alone. Korea asks her the reason for fighting and enduring such suffering, and then, lifting her gaze, asks why this world causes so very much pain. Maria, for her part, is facing All Mechanic, the Earth General. The latter, seeing the girl, orders the Magitech prepared, for in that way he will eliminate her. Maria, upon hearing this, smiles like a little madwoman and shouts that the world hates them very much. Back with Korea, she causes Lady Wing's subordinates to suffer immense pain, while she mentions that she knew something bad would happen to them if they trusted others, since she knows that the world hates her. Lady Wing, upon seeing what she faces, does not hesitate and strikes, using Cursed Black Wind. Nevertheless, the system notifies that Korea canceled the curse, and after that, Lady Wing begins to rot down to the bone. For her part, Maria is able to withstand the Earth General's attacks. Therefore, he changes his mechanical armor to an automatic combat state. But the system notifies that the mechanical armor has forgotten how to function. And though the old man wants to switch to emergency boot, the system notifies that Magitech has forgotten how to function. With that, he falls into desperation, so he orders his Earth mages to attack. But again, the system notifies that the Earth mages have forgotten their magic. Yes, a rather XD moment. And to top it off, afterward it notifies that All Mechanic has forgotten attack actions. Here Maria begins to say that this world hates them, and that is why they need love. Then, taking a bite at the air, she splits the Earth mages in two. Here the little elf enters a state of madness. She screams that they will eat the people we love and who keep them alive. After several more bites at the air, she leaves the Earth General without any protection. So he, in desperation, begs his demon king to save him. Though this is no use, for Maria is drawing near him. She tells him that when you forget everything, only love remains. After that fight, we see how both sisters walk through the night. The system announces that a new threat has appeared in the world, the Elfer sisters, the Witches of Sorrow. On their path, before them stands an old man. Although he finds it strange that the little ones manage to catch up to him, in any case he has decided that they must die, mentioning that when he destroys everything and sacrifices this world, he will obtain his freedom, since that is the pact he made with God. This man asks the girls whether by any chance they believe in God. They answer him that nothing like that exists. Thus it is revealed to us that this man is the Demon King. The latter unfolds a dark barrier with which he is sure they will not harm him. However, his much-vaunted barrier disappears before the hero's power. That puzzles the Demon King, since they promised him that in this world there were no heroes. Seeing the girls draw near in silence, the Demon King asks them whether they do not wish to talk, recalling how the hero he knew did not speak, either, so he opts to use his true form against them, mentioning that it would be in bad taste to face them while leveling up in phases as in the game. He is certain that defeating them is one of his trials, since his intuition tells him that he must not underestimate them, and he quickly hurls several swords as projectiles. However, neither of the two is worried. What is more, Maria underscores that they are lovely. Here she activates her ability, which causes the Demon King's weapons to forget how to attack. Yes, quite a strange power, but anyway. Korea also does her part. She uses her plague ability. This infects the ground and melts it through putrefaction. Seeing now that the Demon King cannot move, they decide to launch the attack. The creature, in spite of it, only opts to strike with its claws which are knocked aside by Korea's axe. Working in close coordination, the two sisters manage to rot and badly damage a large part of the creature's body. The Demon King cannot believe what is happening. In his mind, he repeats that he has God on his side. Maria, with a deranged smile, throws in his face that God does not exist, and that God is nowhere to be found. Korea adds that if he trusts that someone will come to save him, he will only suffer more. The Demon King pays no heed to this, swearing in God's name that he will not die, now healing himself by sheer force of will. Yet no sooner has he managed to recover and even regenerate his leg, he is also about to speak God's real name. Here the system mentions that one cannot name God without permission, so, in the blink of an eye, we see how the Demon King is cut in two. The man who did this appears before the girls. He asks them why they are looking at him, and whether by any chance he did something wrong, underscoring that Alberlas thought he simply had to save them. Korea feels offended at this, but the man tries to apologize, claiming that it was only an accident. Then he calls them cute. He asks them not to be angry, since it does not suit them. But then he sees that the girls want to attack him, so the guy shouts at them not to do it, changes his expression, and clarifies to them that, with the power he has, they will never defeat him. Maria, for her part, opines that that is a kind of lie. She adds that it is all the same now, since that boy ruined their fight. Korea mentions that he spoiled their revenge for their mother. Hearing this, the man takes a fighting stance, while the girls leap straight at him. Right at that moment, Tu arrives to stop them, freezing the twins' feet. She also notices the strange man who appeared, but ignores him. Speaking directly, she tells the twins that the king ordered them to return, since they accomplished their objective, but they answer that that man interfered. Atu draws near to repeat to them again that the king gave them the direct order to return. Korea shouts at her not to stand in their way. Aoyu, annoyed, questions them whether by any chance gaining a little power has made them arrogant, and so she draws her tentacles. Inside, she knows that she cannot underestimate the twins' power, although that is not the problem, since supposedly the ice technique prevents one from moving for a while, although it seems they were able to move. With this confirmed, she knows that King Takuto will forgive her so long as she does not kill them both. At once she extends her hands. The sisters tell her that they will not let her interfere. After all, the king told them that they could do anything, remembering when he told them that they are free, and they do not have to do anything to seek forgiveness, as long as they behave in the way their mother would be proud of. He will applaud everything they do. These words bring them to their senses, and they remember when Isla used to hug them. Here each one asks herself what their mama would think. When the sun rises, Maria tells Korea that they must stop, throwing down their weapons and apologizing to A for being so rude. As a mature woman, Otto tells them that, given the situation, she will pretend this did not happen. Meanwhile, the other man keeps asking forgiveness for interfering, and thus he takes his leave. He wears a school uniform, just as Takuto predicted, so for now they will ignore him. Then Maria asks whether their mama Isla will be able to come back to life. But A regrets to tell them that unfortunately she is dead. Hearing this, both sisters break into tears. Returning to Takuto, after a brief meeting, he asks himself whether by any chance everything is already over, recalling that the mechanics of a 4X game were applied in this world. He tells us that he thought only he could do it, but they faced an enemy with RPG mechanics, and many more genres of those games exist. On the other hand, we see the man from before walking in the void, when suddenly he kneels and asks the sky how it was that God wanted him to rescue some adorable girls in danger, calling God an idiot in that way. Before him appears a girl who calls him master. The young man asks her whether by any chance she is not hurt, to which she answers that she is fine, since God's mysterious power is protecting her. And here it is worth underscoring that he calls her his little slave. But leaving that aside, the girl has a message for him, and yes, it is from God, where God simply asks his forgiveness. That angers the young man greatly, who only thinks that God is making fun of him, calling him a ridiculous God who brought him here just because it occurred to him. Although, well, this was not something so bad, since, looking at the young lady, he mentions that he was able to meet her. Just then a monster appears behind the man, but he eliminates it in a fraction of a second, adding that God gave him the superpower he promised him, so he is very grateful to him. The girl, astonished, tells her master that he is amazing. The young man, feeling good, mentions that things do not always turn out as well as in anime and novels, but moving on from that, he shouts that he will go save the whole world. Returning to the battle of Arikino and Suolina, the latter mentions that today she will find out her secret at last, while Arikino merely notes that this is fight number 19. In passing, seeing the blonde thinking so hard, she tells her that she is very tense, asking her to just relax a little. Nevertheless, Suolina knows that she cannot do that, can she? Not until she discovers how the redhead returns from death so many times. Besides, she is here only to eliminate evil in the name of God. Here she decides to be direct, telling her that she will be annoyed if she does not win. So it is time to roll the dice again. In this way, the die comes up as the number 100, causing Suolina to fall to her knees unconscious. Arikino does not understand what just happened. She asks whether she rolled a critical. Obviously this delights her, so she shouts very happily. Arikino comments that on attempt number 19, and after modifying her sheet, she is sure that now at last she is the strongest. Then she looks up at the sky and asks her master to congratulate her. It is then that she receives her new orders. Having said this, she confirms that she will do it, and then, bowing to her lord of the game, she pronounces the name Mynoghra. For his part, Takuto thinks about the possibility that he will have to fight against people with mechanics from other games, being certain that if something similar happens again, next time they will annihilate him. Just then Gio appears outside his office, informing him that they have returned the guard to the palace, so he can come back. Nevertheless, Takuto asks him to leave him alone. Being aware that he is making a fool of himself, Takuto blames himself for having lost Isla, and besides, he betrayed the twins' trust. At one point he strikes the ground, causing it to crack. Seeing what he has just done, he moves away from the camp, and after punching an immense tree, he realizes the magnitude of his strength. For now he understands that he is not controlling the game from the outside. Since he is in this world, it means that he too is a unit. Although learning this also frustrates him even more, asking himself why he did not verify it from the very beginning, for had he known it, Isla would not have had to die. After that we find everyone gathered before King Takuto. Aoyu tells them that it is an emergency meeting. First she wants to request punishment for the twins' insubordination, but Takuto tells her that there will be no charges. Atu tells him that they must follow the laws of the country and cannot allow exceptions, especially not in emergencies such as this. Takuto interrupts her and also apologizes, bowing his head, since his arrogance caused all of this. Here Jia is open-mouthed, and Molter begs him please not to do it, for a king never asks forgiveness. For his part, Takuto promises them one thing, namely, to bring Isla back to life. On hearing this, everyone falls silent, and the sisters ask whether he truly can resurrect her. Aoyu asks him to wait, since right now they cannot resurrect heroes. But Takuto cries out the following, that his people will be received in heaven and will live eternally in the harmony of the pinnacle of happiness. There is no pain there whatsoever and no suffering at all, and the dead will return to life to be reunited with their loved ones. For in victory by ascension one ascends to a higher plane. And if this world is based on the very same mechanics as the game, he promises to achieve victory in order to recover all that was lost. After hearing this, Tu clarifies that the conditions are far too strict and that for this they would have to recreate an entire world, and if it becomes known, all will turn against them. Takuto tells her that it does not matter, since they will kill every last person who stands in their way. Having said this, he creates a firearm, and then others as well, while he underscores that they will conquer the world, and they will only be able to accomplish it if they obey everything he says. After that we see him seated at the table, mentioning that modern weapons will not be sufficient, and that to achieve victory by ascension they need a better strategy. After jotting down his plan, he goes to check how his civilization is doing and notices that all the elves are gathered in one place. Molter exclaims that Isla will watch over the future of their nation from where she is, leaving her plate and food within the tree. They ask that she rest in peace. Korea mentions that it is not a tomb, and that their mother Isla will rest there for a while, since the king said that he will bring her back to life. Molter asks them whether they think they can achieve what the king expects of them. At the same time, Ja mentions that today was more terrifying than when he first met him. He underscores that he does not know whether he will be able to follow his plans. Takuto sees all this from a tree, and the twins mention that they are behaving like children, for if they become unable to do what they ought to do, the twins will pat their heads. Here Molter smiles upon hearing how the twins give them lessons. Ja swears to follow him even with the whole world against them. He underscores that now it is their turn to trust their king just as he trusts them. At this, Molter cries out to gather their wisdom in order to design a plan and present themselves before the king. After that, everyone withdraws. Takuto remains in order to climb Isla's tree and contemplate the landscape, remembering how much the elves worked. He mentions that he was on the verge of choosing the worst strategy possible, thanking those who are on his side, since thanks to them, they became a nation different from the one in the game, his country Mynoghra. The next day too is downcast from isolating herself because she does not know what to say to King Takuto, but today she is decided, mentioning that her loyalty will always remain the same and sending word to her great and almighty King Takuto that she is at his service. But then she finds him with the twins consoling him, so she runs over, in tears, to do the same. Takuto admits that yesterday he let himself get carried away and frightened everyone, so he feels a little bad. Aoyu recommends that in that case, he say it in another way now. Then Takuto stands up, mentioning that he will not make those who trust him suffer, and that they will work together to achieve victory by ascension. Aoyu and the twins tell him that they will follow him and support him. Takuto, as king, swears that because he is the best player of Eternal Nations, he will make it so that they emerge victorious. But well, here this anime, called Mynoghra, comes to an end.